Hi guys, hello. Thank you for joining the live stream. Today we continue yesterday's discussion about the whatever elements of tantra or the different kinds of tantra that we can find in the regions of China, Tibet, and even I think Mongolia or even in Taoism. Okay, but before starting that chapter, we will just do a small recap of just the last paragraph of yesterday's chapter. Yesterday's chapter, the last chapter we discussed yesterday was called Chinachara from the Mahachin region. I'm going to do the recap of that last paragraph specifically for just very one interesting reason. There's a conversation between Rishi Vasishtha and where he is very angry seeing Chinachara, and he considers Chinachara Veda Viruddha, and how he is convinced that okay, there's no problem with this. That is the most interesting part. Okay, so basically we learned yesterday that Buddha is Kula Bhairava, okay, and that is mentioned in Tara Tantra, which according to Rajarshi Nandi, Matara, the concept of Matara comes from Tibetan Buddhism, at least according to him. It may or may not be true, we'll probably never know. So the last paragraph yesterday said, the peculiar features to be noted of this story are these. This was sort of the summary. Vasishtha must have known that the Vedas and Vedic rites were as ordinarily understood. He is described as Vedantavit because he knew the Vedas and Vedic rites as ordinarily understood. Yet he was surprised on seeing Chinachara rites and disapproved of them. He speaks of it as outside Veda Vahishkrita, and even opposed to it, Vedavada Viruddha. On the other hand, the connection with Veda is shown in that the Devi who promulgates this achara is connected with the Atharva Veda and directs Vasishtha always to follow that Veda, and speaks of the achara not as being opposed to but as something so high as to be beyond the ordinary Vedic ritual. Okay, Veda Nama Piyagochara. He is to be fully learned in the import of Veda, Vedartha Nipuno. It was by the grace of the doctrine and practice of Chinachara that Vishnu became the Lord of Yajurveda. The meaning therefore appears to be that the doctrine and practice lie implicit in the Vedas, but go beyond what is ordinarily taught. Vishnu therefore says that it is not to be disclosed. What meaning again are we to attach to the word Vishnu Buddha Rupa? Buddha means enlightened, but here a particular Buddha seems indicated, though Vishnu is also spoken of as Udbodha Rupi and the Devi as Buddheshwari. The Tara Tantra calls him a Kula Bhairava. As is well known, Buddha was an incarnation of Vishnu. Vasishtha is told to go to Mahachina by the Himalaya and the country of the Bauddhas, the Bauddha Desha. The Bauddhas who follow the Panchatattva ritual are basically considered Kalas, which is the highest form of tantrics. It is or tantra sadhakas. It is a noteworthy fact that the flower of the Devi is Jaba. In Bengali, we call it Jaba, a very common flower in Bengal, the scarlet hibiscus or China rose. As the last name may indicate, it is perhaps not indigenous to India but to China, whence it may have been imported possibly through Nepal. This legend, incorporated as it is in the Shastra itself, seems to me of primary importance in determining the historical origin of the Panchatattva ritual, and therefore Rajarshi Nandi has obviously read these books as well. Therefore his suspicion that Matara's concept has come from Tibetan Buddhism might be correct, because the flower of that Devi is Jaba, which was not even indigenous to India. Although what was India back then, that is a different debate altogether. But yesterday we got some confirmations about our notions that we share, many of us shared in this when we discuss things in this channel in our live streams, is that Aryan invasion theory did not happen. Aryan migration theory, everyone was migrating everywhere, but there was a specific Vedic culture which commies will say is Brahmanism. Let's say Brahmanism. It doesn't have to be necessarily bad, but that Brahmanism was meeting and coming in contact with the pre-Vedic religions and cultures and customs of the rest of the Akhand Bharat region, and always accommodating them, amalgamating with them, and declaring their gods, their cultures as some versions or manifestations of Vedic gods or deities themselves. And of course, the Brahmins remain supreme, and because they remain the Purohits, and hence they do the pujas and yajnas for all castes, all sects, all jatis, etc. Vishwamitra represented foreign interests, Shakas and Hunas. Vashishta represented local ones, as far as I understood from my reading of their duels, I see. My god, Tibetan Buddhist texts are so full of fiction. Taranath says the Dharmakirti defeated Adi Shankara and he committed suicide out of humiliation. Later I verified and came to know Dharmakirti died in 650 and Adi Shankara was born in 780s. Yeah, now they will say that what the text you read is probably more disputed, or they will say that which there may be different Dharmakirtis or different Shankaracharyas. These debates go on. I've basically given up on concluding anything solid on the basis of historical evidence from religious texts. So it's best not to base any argument on just historical incidents. Historical texts or basic philosophy might be a good way to go, but not specific people, specific incidents, etc. These are very tough to justify. If they are even little disputed, then it becomes a whole big puddle of mud. But yesterday we were learning and basically getting confirmation that different Vedic acharas were coming in contact. But my point is that is where I guess idol worship came from, which is the opposition that Brahmo Samaj had, because they considered themselves Aryan, they considered Rigvedas Aryan, they considered Christians also Aryan, and they thought let's therefore bypass this stupid procedure called idol worshipping. But idol worshipping was, I guess, popular it was popular in pre-Islamic Arabia. It was going on in all the pre-Vedic regions of Akhand Bharat. So when the Vedic non-idol worshippers do reach here, they feel let's accommodate them. Let's declare their gods as a manifestation of our gods, and let's just all live together in peace. Let's not fuck around and find out. And therefore, Hinduism is born, and therefore it's fantastic. Okay, let's now start the Tantra Shastras in China. That's today's chapter. Adopting for the purpose of this essay, and without discussion as to their accuracy, the general views of Orientalists on chronology and the development of the Buddhistic schools, the history of the Buddhistic Tantra, is shortly as follows. The Mahayana, which commenced no one knows exactly when, was represented in the 1st and 2nd centuries by the great names of Ashvaghosha and Nagarjuna. Okay, its great scripture is Pragya Paramita. Its dominance under the protection of Kanishka marks the first steps towards metaphysical, theistic and ritualistic religion, a recurring tendency among men to which I have previously referred. In the second half of the 1st century AD, so about 150 AD onwards, Buddhism, apparently in its Mahayana form, spread to China, and thence to Korea, then to Japan in the 6th century AD, and to Tibet in the 7th. Therefore, linguist, you see, you are talking about coming across mentions of Varna-like systems in Korea, which this person S. Paul in the comment section has researched, he's the anonymous sociologist, right-wing sociologist, Hindutvadi sociologist, whose papers we have discussed. So therefore, you see, even if Varna system or caste system did not exist in Korea before Buddhism, it had to exist after Buddhism reached there, because Buddhism had caste system. Okay. In the second half of the 1st century AD, Buddhism, apparently in its Mahayana form, spread to China and thence to Korea and then to Japan in 6th century AD and to Tibet in the 7th century. Sometime between 4th and 5th centuries AD, Asanga, a Buddhist monk of Gandhara, meaning Kandahar, Afghanistan region, is said to have promulgated the Buddhist Yogacara, which, as its name imports, was an adaptation of the Indian Patanjali's Yoga Darshana. Dr. Waddell says that, quote, this yoga parasite, most Europeans dislike what they understand of yoga, this yoga parasite containing within itself the germs of Tantrism, end quote, soon developed, quote, under monster outgrowths which cankered, quote unquote, the little life of purely Buddhistic stock in the Mahayana, which is itself characterized as merely sophistic nihilism. Buddhism was, according to Dr. Waddell, to be just sophistic nihilism, but whatever purity it had, it got corrupted because of this evil thing called yoga. Whatever that may mean, it certainly has the air of reducing the Mahayana to nothingness. We are then told that at the end of the 6th century, Tantrism Shivaic mysticism, a vague word. This is all a quote from some, probably Waddell only, okay? Yeah, from Waddell. We are then told that at the end of the 6th century, quote, Tantrism or Shivaic mysticism, a vague word, with its worship of female energies, Shakti, and friendesses, female friend, plural, friendesses, began to tinge both Hinduism and Buddhism, the latter of which, the Buddhism, quote, became still more debased with silly, contemptible mummery of unmeaning jargon, gibberish, charmed sentences, dharani, and magic circles, mandala, end quote, in the form of the so-called vehicle called Mantrayana, alleged to have been founded by Nagarjuna, who received it from the Dhyani Buddha Vairochana through the Bodhisattva Vajrasattva at the iron, quote-unquote, iron tower in southern India. Continuing, he says, quote, that on the evolution in the 10th century of the demoniacal Buddhas of the Kala Chakra system, the Mantrayana developed into the Vajrayana. Developed what? The Mantrayana developed into the Vajrayana what? The most quote-unquote depraved form of Buddhist doctrine, wherein the so-called quote-unquote devotee endeavors with the aid of the quote-unquote demoniacal Buddhas and of friendesses, Dakini, quote, to obtain various siddhis. The missionary author, the Reverend Graham Sandberg, who is so little favorable to Buddhism that he can discover in it, quote, no scheme of metaphysics or morality which can be dignified with the title of an ethical system, end quote. When, however, speaking of this so-called most depraved form, in a short chapter on the Buddhist Tantric rites, the resemblance of all this to Catholic practice as regards the souls in purgatory is obvious. As in the Indian compendia, such as the Tantrasara, there were prayers, mantras, and dharanis to protect against every form of evil, against the bad spirits, wild beasts, natural calamities, human enemies, and so forth, which were said to be effective, provided that they were applied in the proper disposition and at the right time and in the right manner. But more effective than all these was the initiation with water, Abhisheka. For innumerable good spirits, because innumerable good spirits surround the initiates meaning जो कि दीक्षा लेने आए हैं और या फिर जिसका अभी अभी दीक्षा हुआ है, because innumerable good spirits surround the initiates in all places and at all times so that no evil touches them. It was recommended also to carry on the body the written name of one's protector, Ishtadevta, or one of those signs which were called transcendent seals, conquerors of all demons. This practice again is similar to that of the use by the Indian tantrics of the kavacha. Okay, so he was equating with Christianity up until this point. Okay, so all this we heard, it seemed like we were talking about tantra only, but it was all about Christianity. Okay, now we get to tantra. This practice again is similar to that of the use by the Indian tantrics of the kavacha and to the practice of Catholics who wear scapulars, Agnus Dei, and consecrated medals. In order to encourage frequent invocations, as also to count them, the Buddhist tantrics had Buddhistic chaplets like the Indian mala and Catholic rosary. The beads varied from 1080 or 1008 to 27. In invoking the protectors, the worshipper held firmly one bead with 4 fingers, the thumb and first finger of both hands. Okay, and then centered his mind on the formula of invocation. Carried on the body, these rosaries, in case of Christianity, these rosaries protected from every ill and made all that one said a prayer. To use the Indian phrase, all that was then said was mantra. Tantricism was reinforced on the arrival in 719 AD of 2 Indian Brahmanas, Vajrabodhi and Amogha. The demand for tantras then became so great that Amogha was officially deputed by the imperial government to bring back from India and Ceylon as many as he could. Amogha, who was the favorite of 3 emperors holding the rank of minister and honored with many titles, lived till 774 AD. He made Tantricism the fashionable sect. Father Weiger says that in the numerous works assigned by him, there is not to be found any of those rites, RITES rites, Indian or Tibetan, which come under the general term Vamachara, which includes worship with wine and women. He has it from Buddhist sources that they deplored the abuses which, as regards this matter, have taken place in India. In the state of decadence witnessed today, there largely remains only a liturgy of invocations accompanied by mudra and music, with lanterns and flags from which bonzes of low degree, making a living when called upon by householders to cure the sick, push their business and so forth. Amogha, however, demanded more of those who sought initiation. Okay, Amogha demanded more from those who sought initiation. Okay, or kuch karke dikhao. In the Indian fashion, he tested the would-be disciple and initiated only those who were fit and had the quality of Vajra. To such people, doubtlessly, was confided the higher esoteric teachings and ritual, not to any random folk. Initiation was conferred by the ritual pouring of water on the head, Abhisheka, after a solemn act of contrition and devotion. The following is a description of the rite of initiation, Abhisheka. It is the Buddha who speaks, quote, "Just as an imperial prince is recognized as he who shall govern, so my disciples, just as an imperial prince is recognized as he who shall govern, in the same way my disciples, who are tested and perfectly formed, are consecrated with water. For the purpose of this ceremony, one places on a height, or at least on rising ground, a platform 7 feet in diameter, strewn with flowers and sprinkled with scented water. Let silence be kept all around. Persian incense is burnt. Place a mirror of bronze and 7 arrows to keep away demoniac spirits. The candidate, who has been previously prepared by a rigorous abstinence, fully bathed and clad in freshly washed garments, kneels on the platform and listens to a lecture explaining the meaning of the rite. Kneels. I guess that is why that position is called Vajrasan. Because they are supposed to have the character of Vajra. It has something to do with Vajra. I don't know yoga. His right shoulder is uncovered and his 2 hands joined. He forms interiorly the necessary intention. Then the master of the ceremony, holding him firmly by the right hand, pours with the left hand on the head of the candidate for the initiating the ritual water. The initiation made the chela a son of Buddha and a depository of the latter's doctrine, for the tantras were deemed to represent the esoteric teaching of the Buddha, just as in India they contain the essence of all knowledge as taught by Shiva or Devi. Now, one interesting thing we noticed here from the quote of Amogha, okay? This is Amogha talking about the initiation ceremony, Abhisheka. This is basically what we had learnt in that paper we were discussing by that fired sociologist. What was his name? Declan Quigley. He was saying that Brahmins were never the supreme authority, that they had enough power to oppress people, because they were always subordinate to kings. And here you see the tone of the sentence in the beginning. He's saying he's kind of showing that his aspirational model is the king. Why would a Brahmin who is supposedly, or a religious head who is supposedly above kings, is saying that just as an imperial prince is recognized as he who shall govern, in the same way my disciples, tested and perfectly formed, are consecrated with water. So he's kind of validating his practice, his disciples, by drawing the connection with what kings are doing. You see, this is where this kind of adds to Declan Quigley's research. The initiates of Amogha, so the Dikshit children of Amogha, were distinguished by their retired life and secret practices, which gained for them the name of School of Mystery. It transpired that they were awaiting a savior in a future age. This rendered them suspect in the eye of government, who thought that they were perhaps a revolutionary society. The sect was accordingly forbidden. But this did not cause it to disappear. So you see where even Christianity repeatedly comes into the play. They are waiting for a savior in a future age. But this did not cause it to disappear. On the contrary, for as the Reverend Father says, in China, and we may add elsewhere, the forbidden fruit is that which is of all the most delicious. The lower ranks avoided this higher initiation and largely lapsed into mechanical formalism. क्या ऐसे ही आज ये सब पूजा पाठ करना है, मंत्र जाप करना है, घर जाके सो जाना है. And the true adepts wrapped themselves in a mystery still more profound, awaiting the coming of the future Buddha Maitreya, who they thought had inspired Asangha with the doctrine they held. Had inspired Asangha with the doctrine they held. Father Weiger says that their morality is severe and their life very austere. The quote is Liur morale est severe, liur vie tres austere. There is a hierarchy of teachers who visit the households at appointed intervals, always after nightfall, leaving before daybreak, and supported by the alms of those whom they thus teach. The learned missionary author adds that tantric adepts of this class are often converted to Christianity and quickly become excellent Christians. Wow. Quote, since their morals are good and they have a lively belief in the supernatural. End quote. Here I may note on the subject of dharanis that it has been said that these were introduced into China during the Tang dynasty. Father Weiger, however, says that an authentic Riddhi mantra is to be found in translations made by Liu Qiachan in the 2nd century AD. Buddha is said to have announced to Ananda, who accompanied him, that 500 years after his nirvana, a sect of magicians, whom the author calls Shaivite Tantrics, would be the cause of the swarming of evil spirits. Instructions were then given for their exorcism. This puts the Shaivites far back. This chapter is an admirably understanding review reprinted from the Theosophist of July 1919 by Mr. Johann van Manen, the Tibetan scholar. It was written on the 7th volume of Tantric Texts, which contains the first Tibetan Tantra to be published. The Tantra which was selected for the series was the Sri Chakra Sambhara, because the editor happened to have manuscripts of this and other works of the same school. उनके पास manuscript था तो उसी का लिख दिया. All lovers of Indian philosophy are familiar with the magnificent series of works on the Tantra, which under the general editorship of Arthur Avalon, the author of this book, have seen the light within the last few years. Some 15 volumes, either texts, translations, or studies, have hitherto been published, and the titles of a number of further works are announced as in preparation or in the press. Just now, a new volume has been added to the series, constituting volume 7 of the texts, and this book is undoubtedly one of the most interesting of all those hitherto issued. Up till now, the series has only dealt with works and thoughts originally written down in Sanskrit. This new volume goes further afield and brings us the text and translation of a Tibetan work. Dealing with the same subject, the whole series is intended to study. Tibetan Tantrism is undoubtedly a development of its Indian prototype, and at a further stage of our knowledge of the whole subject. The historical development of this school, when our knowledge is further developed on this whole subject, the historical development of this school of thought will be no doubt studied minutely. Though this present volume brings valuable material towards such an historical study, our knowledge of a Tantra under this aspect is as yet far too limited to enable us to say much about this side of the questions raised by its publication, or to find a place for it in the present review of the work. What is more urgent now is to examine this book as it stands, to try to define the general trend of its contents, and to attempt to value it generally in terms of modern speech and thought. In our discussion of the book, therefore, we shall not concern ourselves with questions of technical scholarship at all, but attempt to go to the heart of the subject in such a manner as might be of interest to any intelligent man attracted towards philosophical and religious thought. And it is perhaps easier to do so with the present work than with many others in the series to which it belongs, because more than these others, this work makes an appeal to the intellect direct and proves very human and logical, so as to evoke a response in even such readers as are who are not prepared by a detailed knowledge of system and terminology to disentangle an elaborate outer form from the inner substance. It is true that here also every page and almost every line bristles with names and terms, but the thought connecting such terms is clear, and these serving much the purposes of algebraic notations in mathematical formulae can be easily filled in by any reader with values derived from his own religious and philosophical experience. Algebraic notations. The Tantras have often not been kindly spoken of. It has been said that they have hitherto played in Indology the part of a jungle which everybody is anxious to avoid. Still stronger, a great historian is quoted as having said that it would be, quote, the unfortunate lot of some future scholars to wade through the disgusting details of drunkenness and debauchery, which were regarded as an essential part of their religion by a large section of the Indian community not long ago, end quote. And Grunwedel, speaking especially of the Tibetan Tantras, from the immense literature of which as yet nothing had been translated, he says, quote, to work out things will be indeed a sacrificium intellectus, meaning your intellect will be wasted, but they are after all no more stupid than the brahmanas on which so much labor has been spent. बोल रहा है कि तंत्रा का रिसर्च करने में बहुत तुम्हारा इंटेलेक्ट वेस्ट होगा, मगर वैसे भी हमने ब्राह्मण पे रिसर्च करके इतना इंटेलेक्ट वेस्ट किया ही है, तो अलग कुछ नहीं होगा. बट हियर वी हैव द फर्स्ट, ये किसने बोला है? ग्रनवेडल, लोल. But here we have the first translation into a European language. Of one of these tantric texts. And far from being obscene or stupid, it strikes us as a work of singular beauty and nobility, and as a creation of religious art almost unique in its lofty grandeur. It is so totally unlike any religious document we are acquainted with that it is almost inconceivable that this is only a brief specimen or a first specimen made accessible to the general public of a vast literature of which the extent, as existing in Tibet, of which the extent cannot yet even be measured. Yet in saying that the nature of our book is unique, we do not mean to imply that close analogies cannot be found for it in the religious literatures and practices of the rest of the world. Such an aloofness would be rather suspicious, for real religious experience is of course universal. The real ones, not the political actions coming out of it. And proceeding from the same elements in the human heart, and aspiring to the same ends, must always show kinship in manifestation. Yet this Tibetan product has a distinctive style of its own. Which singles it out in appearance as clearly, let us say, as the specific character of Assyrian or Egyptian art is different from that of other styles. It's style different hai. When we now proceed to examine the document before us, at the outset, a verdict of one of the critics of Tantrism comes to our mind, to the effect that the Tantra is perhaps the most elaborate system of autosuggestion in the world. Autosuggestion means kind of self-diagnosing that, Acha, I think I'm feeling that. Acha, I think I'm getting a vision of that. Acha, I think I have seen that God. Acha, I think some good things are happening because I did that thing or that other thing. So that usually happens in the world of mental health. Freud and all have spoken about it. But this is being said as a criticism. Oh, acha, autosuggestion explain bhi kiya hai yahan pe. According to some criticism, that Tantra is perhaps the most elaborate system of autosuggestion in the world. This dictum was intended as a condemnation, but though accepting the verdict as correct, we ourselves are not inclined to accept together with it the implied conclusion. Autosuggestion is the establishment of mental states and moods from within, instead of as a result of impressions received from without. Okay, listen to this. Autosuggestion is the establishment of mental states and moods from within, instead of as a result of impressions received from without. Evidently, there must be two kinds of this autosuggestion, a true and a false one. The true one is that which produces states of consciousness corresponding to those which may be produced by realities in the outer world, and the false one is that which produces states of consciousness not corresponding to reactions to any reality without. In the ordinary way, the consciousness of man is shaped in response to impressions from without, and so ultimately rests on sensation. But theoretically, there is nothing impossible in the theory that these quote unquote modifications of the thinking principle should be brought about by the creative will and rest rather on imagination and intuition than on sensation. This theory has not only been philosophically and scientifically discussed but also practically applied in many a school of mysticism of yoga. If I remember well, there is a most interesting book by a German non-mystic professor, Staudenmayer, dealing with this subject under the title of Magic as an Experimental Science in German. And the same idea seems also to underlie Steiner's theory of what he calls imaginative clairvoyance. In Christian mysticism, this has been fully worked out by De Loyola in his spiritual, quote unquote, spiritual exercises. As applied to the Passion of the Christ. In what is nowadays called New Thought, this principle is largely applied in various manners. In our book, we find it applied in terms of Tantric Buddhism with a fullness and detail surpassing all other examples of this type of meditation. In order to present the idea in such a way that it may look plausible in itself, we have first to sketch out the rationale underlying any such system. This is easily done. We can conceive of this universe as an immense ocean of consciousness or intelligence in which the separate organisms, human beings included, live and move and have their being. If we conceive of this mass of consciousness as subject to laws analogous to those similar to those of gravity and at the same time as being fluidic in nature, okay, gravity की वजह से तुम्हारा पैर जमीन पे रहता है मगर तुम फिर भी चल फिर सकते हो. Interesting analogy. If we conceive of this mass of consciousness as subject to laws analogous to those of gravity and at the same time as being fluidic in nature, then the mechanism of all intellectual activity might well be thought of. Mechanism of all intellectual activity might well be thought of in one of its aspects as hydraulic in character. Let any organism fit to be a bearer of consciousness, any organism which is in fact fit to be a bearer of consciousness, only open itself for the reception of it, and the hydraulic pressure of the surrounding sea of consciousness will make it flow in such a form as the construction of the organism assumes. The wave and the sea, the pot and the water are frequent symbols in the East, used to indicate the relation between the all consciousness and the individual consciousness. If the human brain is the pot sunk in the ocean of divine consciousness, the form of that pot will determine the form which the all consciousness will assume within that brain. Now, imagination or autosuggestion may determine that form. Through guess, intuition, speculation, tradition, authority, or whatever the determinant factor may be, any such form may be chosen. The man may create any form and then by expectancy, stillness, passivity, love, aspiration, or whatever term we choose, draw the cosmic consciousness within him. Only determining its form for himself, but impersonally receiving the power which is not from himself. Okay? But impersonally receiving the power which is not from himself but from without. The process is like the preparation of a mold in which molten metal is to be cast, with this difference that the metal cast into the mold is not self-active and alive and not ever present and pressing on every side, just like as would happen in the case of living consciousness, in which constitutes our universe. We may take an illustration from the mechanical universe. The universe is one seething mass of forces in constant interplay. The forces are there and at work. The forces are there and at work all the time, but only become objectified when caught in suitable receivers. The wind force, if not caught by the arms of the windmill, the forces of stream or waterfall, if not similarly gathered in a proper mechanism, disperse themselves in space and are not focused in and translated into and are therefore not translated into objective units of action. Oh, beautiful analogies, guys. I have to underline this. So with the vibrations sent along the wire in telegraphic or telephonic communication, or with the other vibrations sent wirelessly, in a universe peopled with intelligences, higher beings, gods, a whole hierarchy of entities from the highest power and perfection to such as belong to our own limited class, constant streams of intelligence and consciousness must continuously flash through space and fill existence. Okay. Now it's must continuously flash through space and fill existence. Now it seems theoretically indeed very probable, assuming that consciousness is one and akin in essence, that the mechanical phenomenon of sympathetic vibration may be applied to that consciousness as well as to what are regarded as merely mechanical vibrations. So, putting all the above reasonings together, it is at least a plausible theory that man, by a process of autosuggestion, may so modify the organs of his consciousness. And likewise attune his individual consciousness in such a way as to become able to enter into a sympathetic relation with the forces of cosmic consciousness ordinarily manifesting outside him and remaining unperceived, passing him as it were, instead of being caught and harnessed. And this is not only a theory, but more than that, a definite statement given as a result of experience by mystics and meditators of all times and claims. This is why everyone who tries Tantra ends up saying that, yeah, it worked for me. Now we may ask, how has this method been applied in our present work? A careful analysis of its contents makes us discover several interesting characteristics. How has this method been applied in our present work? First of all, we have to remember that our text presupposes a familiarity with the religious conceptions, names, personalities, and philosophical principles of Northern Buddhism, which we are all freely used in the composition. What is strange and foreign in them to the Western reader is so only because he moved in unfamiliar surroundings. But the character of the composition is one which might be compared to such analogous Western productions, with great differences, however, as the Passion Play at Oberammergau or the medieval mystery plays. Only in some of the latter, the historical element predominates, whilst in the Tibetan composition, the mythological element, for lack of a better word, forms the basis and substance, the so-called mythological element. In other words, in this ritual of meditation, the gods, powers, and principles are the actors and not historical or symbolical personages of religious tradition. They are not people. So they are... Gods, powers, and principles are actors, not historical or symbolical personages of religious tradition. Secondly, the play is enacted in the mind, inwardly, instead of on the scene, outwardly. The actors are not persons, but conceptions. Beautiful. And therefore, Bhairava is real. First, the meditator has to swing up his consciousness to a certain pitch of intensity, steadiness, quiet, determination, and expectancy. Having turned it to the required pitch, he fixes it on a simple center of attention, like with the help of a yantra. Center of attention, which is to serve as a starting point or gate through which his imagination shall well up, as the water of a fountain through which his imagination shall well up, मतलब almost overflow करने का जो मुहूर्त है, as the water of a fountain comes forth through the opening of the water pipe. From this central point, the mental pictures come forth. They are placed round the central conception. From simple to complex in orderly progression and imaginative structure, from simple to complex in orderly progression, the imaginative structure is elaborated, and which is why idols, yantras are not necessary at the highest levels of sadhana. It is a beginning. It is for the beginners. But from simple to progress, simple to complex, in orderly progression, the imaginative structure is elaborated. The chief gods appear successively, followed by the minor deities. Spaces, regions, directions are carefully determined. Attributes, colors, symbols, sounds are all minutely prescribed and deftly worked in, and explications carefully given. A miniature world is evolved in your mind, seething with elemental forces working in the universe as cosmic forces and in man as forces of body and spirit. Most of the quantities on this elaborate notation are taken from the body of indigenous religious teaching and mythology. Some are so universal and transparent that the non-Tibetan reader can appreciate them even without a knowledge of the religious technical terms of Tibet. But anyhow, an attentive reading and rereading reveals something, even to the outsider, of the force of this symbological structure and makes him intuitively feel. Never ignore your intuitions. That is quite possibly God speaking through you. Making him intuitively feel that here we are, because of course your your gut feeling might be wrong, your conscience is never wrong, your intuitions might be wrong. So it's better to trust your conscience. But intuitions also get better with practice and with more reading, more experiences, etc., and humility, of course. And makes him intuitively feel that here we are assisting in the unfolding of a grand spiritual drama, sweeping up the mind to heights of exaltation and nobility. As to the terminological side of the text, the editor's abundant notes prove as valuable as useful. They may disturb the elevated unity of the whole at first, but after some assiduous familiarizing, lead to fuller and deeper comprehension. Even a single reading is sufficient to gain the impression that a stately and solemn mental drama is enacted before us with an inherent impressiveness which would attach, for instance, to a Christian to the performance of a ritual in which all the more primary biblical persons, human and superhuman, were introduced in suitable ways as actors. And the superlative cleverness of this structure, starting from a single basic note, this is developed into a chord. This is a terminology from Western music, that single note accompanied by its different harmonies makes up a chord. A chord is a minimum of three notes, okay, triads: sa, ga, and pa. That is a chord. A major chord is sa, shuddha ga, and pa, and a minor chord is sa, komal ga, pa. So, starting from a single basic note, this is developed like a chord, developed into a chord, which again expands into a melody, which is then elaborately harmonized. Indeed, the meditation is in its essence both musical and ritual. The initial motives are developed, repeated, elaborated, and new ones introduced. These again are treated in the same way. A symphony is evolved and brought to a powerful climax, and then again this full world of sound, form, meaning, color, power is withdrawn, limited, taken back into itself, folded up and dissolved, turned inwards again, and finally returned into utter stillness and rest, into that tranquil void from which it was originally evoked, and which is its eternal mother. I do not know of any literature which in its nature is so absolutely symphonic, so directly akin to music, as this sample of a Tibetan meditational exercise. And curiously enough, it makes us think of another manifestation of Indian religious art. Because in words, this document is akin to the Indian temple decoration, especially the South Indian Gopura, which in its endless repetitions and elaborations seems indeed instinct with the same spirit which has given birth to this scheme of imagination taught in these tantras. This is interesting. The fact that for some reason harmony did not develop in in Eastern music. Eastern music remained until it got fossilized. I don't think it ever got fossilized, but as such, harmony was never applied in authentic Eastern music, by which I mean Eastern classical. But of course, I have attributed that to poverty in the society, etc., colonizations. But harmony did appear in Western society, and pretty late, post medieval almost, after 1500s, 1600s. But that was, I have argued, because of their the progressive graph of economic prosperity. But now Arthur Avalon is arguing, or whoever wrote this review of Arthur Avalon's book, who was this? This is written by Mr. Johan van Manen, the Tibetan scholar. He is pointing out that harmony in fact existed in Indian society in other fields, not in music. As an example, he is saying South Indian Gopura temple decoration or Tibetan Tantra itself. These were basically the same as harmony and symphony. Interesting argument. Only in only in stone or plaster the mythological host is sterile and immovable, whilst as created in the living mind, the similar structure partakes of the life of the mind within and without. The sculptural embodiment the sculptural embodiment is therefore serviceable to the less evolved mind, okay, जिसके लिए मूर्ति पूजा है, यंत्र है. Again, that argument is proven here. The sculptural embodiment is therefore serviceable to the less evolved mind. But the Tantra is for the religious thinker who possesses power. But we said that our meditational structure was also akin to ritual. What we mean by this is that all the figures and images evoked in the mind in the meditation are, after all, only meant as the words, gestures, and gestures in a ritual to suggest feelings, to provoke states of consciousness, and to furnish, if the simile be not thought too pathetic, pegs to hang ideas upon. And this idea works very much in sports. Any professional athlete will tell you the idea of triggering muscle memories and visualizations to hai hi. Like Rahul Dravid used to wear, I think, the left pad every time, almost like a ritual before going out to play. Why? Because that triggers a sort of a muscle memory that when he went to practice, when he was comfortable, when he was making great runs comfortably in some other scenario, in those days or in one such day, he wore the left pad first, and therefore let's continue with that tradition, so to speak, so that same you are transported into that mental zone. There's a famous, almost legendary, multiple times world champion in the welterweight division of UFC, an MMA fighter called Israel Adesanya. He triggers muscle memory in a different way. In the gym, you can't, when you are an MMA fighter, you can't go 100% every day, right? तो हर रोज तो मार खा के हॉस्पिटल में ही पड़ा रहेगा, तो ट्रेन सीखेगा कब और फिटनेस का कब कैसे मेंटेन करेगा. But on some days, especially when your fight is coming up, you have to go 100% in, okay? So on the days that he goes 100% in, before starting his practice, he does a particular sort of a ritual, okay? He does woo 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 ऐसे करके क्लिक करता है और आवाज़ें करता है. And that helps him trigger that same feeling of giving 100%. He triggers his muscle memory that way on the day of the fight. He goes into the cage when the fight is on, all the audiences are in, and he does that same thing that triggers his muscle memory that now I'm in that zone where I'm used to giving my 100%. That is what Tantra is basically, in many ways, talking about. Like as a fine piece of music or a play, just like a fine piece of music or play, natak, can only be well rendered when rehearsed over and over again and practiced so that the form side of the production becomes almost mechanical, and all power in the production can be devoted to the infusion of inspiration. So well said. In the same way, this meditation can only be perfectly performed after untold amounts of practice and devotion. It would be a totally mistaken idea to read this book as a mere piece of literature, once to go through it to see what it contains and then to let it go. Just as the masterpieces of music can be heard hundreds of times, just as the great rituals of the world grow in power on the individual in the measure with which he becomes familiar with them and altogether identifies himself with the most infinitely small minutiae of their form and constitution. In the same way, meditation ritual is one which only by repetition can be mastered and perfected. Like the great productions of art or nature, it has to grow on the individual. This meditational exercise is not for the small, nor for the flippant, nor for those in a hurry. It is inherently an esoteric thing, one of those teachings belonging to the regions of quiet, tranquility, and rest of Taoistic philosophy. To the ignorant, it must seem jabber, and so it is truly esoteric, hiding itself by its own nature within itself, though seemingly open and accessible to all. But in connection with its meditation, we do not think of pupils who read it once or twice or 10 times or 100, but of austere thinkers who work on it as a life work through laborious years of strenuous endeavor. For what must be done to make this meditation into a reality? Every concept in it must be vivified and drenched with life and power. Every god in it must be made into a living god. Every power manipulated in it needs to be made into a potency. The whole structure must be made vibrant with forces capable of entering into sympathetic relation with the greater cosmic forces in the universe, created in imitation on a lower scale within the individual meditator himself. Okay, एक miniature simulated version तुम्हारे अंदर करना है. To the religious mind, the universe is filled with the thoughts of the gods, with the powers of great intelligences and consciousnesses radiating eternally through space and really constituting the world that is. Quote, the world is only a thought in the mind of God. This is a quote from that text. What text was it? Sri Chakra Sambhara. Yeah, Sri Chakra Sambhara. In Bengali, Shambhar means a collection. So I guess this means Sri Chakra collection. It must take years of strenuous practice even to build up the power to visualize and correctly produce as an internal drama this meditation given in our book. To endow it with life and to put power into this life is an achievement that no small mind, no weak devotee can hope to perform. So this meditation is a solemn ritual like the Roman Catholic Mass. Only it is performed in the mind instead of in the church, and the mystery it celebrates is as individual and not a general sacrament. That is why individualism is by default very much encouraged and gets practiced in a Sanatani society. No matter how group identity becomes, how much it becomes important, because after all you have your own Ishtadevta, etc. In what we have said above, we have tried to give some outlines of the chief characteristics of this remarkable work, now brought within the reach of the general reading public and especially of benefit to those among them interested in the study of comparative religion among broad lines. We owe indeed a debt of gratitude to Arthur Avalon, the author of this book, whose enthusiasm for and insight into the Indian religious and philosophical mind have unearthed this particular gem for us. We may be particularly grateful that his enthusiasm has not set itself a limit so as to prevent him from dealing with anything other than Sanskrit lore alone, and from looking for treasure even beyond the Himalayas. In this connection, we may mention that it is in his intention to maintain this Catholic attitude, for he is now taking steps to incorporate also an important Japanese work on the Vajrayana in his Tantric series. As far as this first Tibetan text is concerned, the choice has been decidedly happy. फिर से नाम भूल गया. Sri Chakra Sambhara. Yeah, Sri Chakra Sambhara. Let me underline this. We learned great things from this text. What a beautiful explanation this was. This made sense. Even it will make sense to even atheists. As far as this first Tibetan text is concerned, the choice has been decidedly happy, and he has been no less fortunate in having been able to secure a competent collaborator to undertake the philological portion of the work, the translating and editing labor. The result of thus associating himself with a capable indigenous scholar to produce the work has been a great success, a production of practical value which will undoubtedly not diminish in all essentials for a long time to come. For not only is this particular work in and for itself of interest with a great beauty of its own, it has another value in quite other directions than those connected with the study of meditation or of religious artistic creation. Interesting. The work furnishes a most important key to a new way of understanding many phases and productions of Indian philosophy. The projection of the paraphernalia of Hindu mythology, inwards into the mind as instruments of meditation, the internalizing of what we find in the Puranas or the epic externalized as mythology, has seemed to me to throw fresh and illuminating light on Indian symbology. To give an illustration, in this Tantra we find an elaborate manipulation of weapons, shields, armor as instruments for the protection of the consciousness. Now all these implements figure, for instance, largely and elaborately in such a work as the Ahirbudhniya Samhita, of which Dr. Schrader has given us a splendid summary in his work Introduction to the Pancharatra. Now, even Lord Shiva is called Ahirbudhniya, right? But in the Pancharatra, all these implements are only attributes of the gods, okay? In the Pancharatra, all these implements, the protections, kavacha, etc., shields, weapons, are only attributes of the gods. In our text, we find a hint as to how all these external mythological data can also be applied to and understood as internal workings of the human consciousness. And in this light, Indian mythology assumes a new and richer significance. I do not want to do more here than a hint at the point involved, but no doubt any student of Hindu mythology who is also interested in Hindu modes of thought, in the Hindu psyche, will at once see how fruitful this idea can be. Vaibhav is saying, is there a difference between Vedic Dharma and Sanatan Dharma? Not anymore. It used to, before Vedic Dharma came in contact with the pre-Vedic customs. Today, whatever is Hinduism is Sanatan Dharma. I don't know if you reject Ved, then you can be called a Sanatan Dharmi. I think Lingayats, Charvakas cannot be considered. No, then also Buddha sab koi chala gaya. No. Yeah, therefore, whatever is Hindu is Sanatan Dharma today. Okay. One of the riddles of Indian thought is that its symbology is kinetic and not static, and eludes the objective formality. It escapes the objective formality of Western thought. That is why every Hindu god is another, who is again another, who is once more another. Hence the accommodative, amalgamating nature of Sanatan Dharma and when the Vedic civilization or the Vedic people, the so-called Brahmanism, their procedure of Sanskritizing the non-Aryan, unarya lands. Did not Kipling say something about Kali, who is Parvati, who is Shitala, who is worshipped against the smallpox? End quote. This was a quote from Rudyard Kipling. So also, almost every philosophical principle is an quote-unquote aspect of another principle, but never a clear-cut, well-circumscribed, independent thing by itself. It's just a part of something bigger and larger. Our text goes far towards giving a hint as to how all these gods and principles, which in the Puranas and other writings appear as extra-human elements, may perhaps also be interpreted as aspects of the human mind and even human body, and become a psychological mythology instead of a cosmic one. What a beautiful thing to say. I don't think even the word mythology is necessary here. The idea is not absolutely new, but has been put forward by mystics before. The cherubinic wanderer sang that it would be of no avail to anyone, even if the Christ were born 100 times over in Bethlehem, if he were not born within the man himself. It has been said of the Bhagavad Gita that it is in one sense the drama of the soul, and that meditation on it, transplanting the field of Kurukshetra within the human consciousness, may lead to a direct realization of all that is taught in that book, and to a vision of all the glories depicted therein. That idea is the same as that which is the basis of our text. Its message is, create a universe within, in order to be able to hear the echoes of the universe without, which is one with that within in essence. If seers, occultists, meditators really exist, they may be able to outline the way and method by which they themselves have attained. So it was with De Loyola and his quote-unquote spiritual exercises, and there is no reason why it should not be the same with the book we are discussing here, the Sri Chakra Sambhara. As to how far we have here a result of practical experience or only an ingenious theory, a great attempt as it were, we will not and cannot decide. We will not and cannot decide. Humility. To make statements about this needs previous experiment, and we have only read the book from the outside, taken a scholarly perspective. इसको खुद पता है कि ये scholarly practice approach ले रहा है, not the practitioner's approach. Not lived its contents from within. Beautiful humility. But however this may be, ये humility अगर कॉमी academics का रहता, हमारा देश कुछ अलग होता आज. But however this may be, even such an outer reading is sufficient to reveal to us the grandeur of the conception put before us. Fair enough. and to enable us to feel the symphonic splendor of the creation as a work of religio-philosophic art. And that alone is enough to enable us to judge the work as a masterpiece and a document of first-class value in the field of religious and mystical literature. The form is very un-Western indeed, and in many ways utterly unfamiliar and perhaps bewildering. But the harmony of thought, the greatness of the fundamental conceptions, the sublimity of endeavor embodied in it are clear, and these qualities are certainly enough to gain for it admirers and friends, perhaps here and there a disciple, even in our time so badly prepared to hear this Tibetan echo from that other world, which in many ways we in the West make it our strenuous business to forget and to discount. Beautifully said. Now the next chapter is called Shakti in Taoism. This is a small but fun chapter it's going to be, I think. The belief in the Shakti, or the divine power as distinguished from the divine essence. Okay. Shakti distinguished from Swarupa. The belief in Shakti or divine power as distinguished from the divine essence or Swarupa, divine power or divine essence. The former, the Shakti being generally imagined for purposes of worship as being in female form, is very ancient. The concept of Shakti in Chinese Taoism is not merely a proof of this, for the Shakti notion is much older, but is an indication of the ancient Indian character of the doctrine. There are some who erroneously think the concept had its origin in Shaivite mysticism, having its origin somewhere in the 6th century of our era. Lao Tse, or the Old Master, was 20 years senior to Confucius, and his life was said to have been passed between 570 to 490 BC, a date commonly adopted by European Orientalists as that of the death of Buddha, Indian and Tibetan opinions being regarded as extravagant. And that would bring his life into the 6th century BC, one of the quote-unquote extravagant, okay? Those historians say that Indian and Tibetan opinions of Buddha's birth date and death date are extravagant, quote-unquote extravagant. And that would bring his life into the 6th century BC, one of the most wonderful in the world's history. Lao Tse is said to have written the Tao Te Ching, the fundamental text of Taoism. This title, and interestingly, Taoism is also pronounced as Taoism. Now the fun part is, there is an American Christian conservative Asian guy, Chinese, half Chinese, completely Chinese, but born and brought up in America. His name is Vince Dow. He got into a bit of a controversy for saying that he said that, yeah, Vivek is great, but does it bode well for America? Does it give a good impression that a non-Christian is going to run the country? He is in full support of Vivek's policies, but he still had some discomfort at the thought of a non-Christian. Not because Vivek is Hindu, not because Vivek is brown, because he himself is not white. But America being a Protestant nation to begin with, is it a good sign that a non-Christian will have to run the country? But the hilarious part is that his surname is Dow, so he has no memory, recollection, or respect for his Taoist past, and where even when Taoism had Shakti, Tantra, etc. Lol. Not Tantra, maybe, Shakti. Lao Tse is said to have, also pronounced as Lao Tzu, okay? This is Lao Tse. Yeah. Lao Tse is said to have written the Tao Te Ching, the fundamental text of Taoism. This title means treatise on Tao and Tai. Tao, is this the same as yin and yang then? Shiva and Shakti. Dualities, dichotomies. This is an universal conception. Tao, which Lao Tse calls the great, is in its Sanskrit equivalent Brahman, and Te is its power or activity or Shakti. Dekho. As Father P.L. Weiger, S.J., to whose work Histoire de croyances religio et de opinions philosophiques on China. I am here, written in 1917. I am here indebted because of citing him, points out Lao Tse did not invent Taoism no more than Confucius 557 to 419 BC invented Confucianism. It is characteristic of these and other ancient Eastern masters that they do not claim to be more than transmitters of a wisdom older than themselves. Just like Guru Nanak was not the founder of a religion called Sikhism. He was just another Sanatan Dharmi, building upon many ideas and coming up with fresh interpretations. He was not starting out a new religion all of a sudden. In the same way, Lao Tse or Confucian, they were not starting new religions. They were being transmitters of the existing culture. They were building upon it. Lao Tse was not the first to teach Taoism. Vaibhav is asking an important question, an interesting question. Reducing different schools of thought to these different isms like Hinduism, Taoism, Buddhism, etc., serves as a barrier to understand and empathize with our ancestors. Your thoughts? It is a barrier if you take those distinctions too seriously. It is a fair point what you are saying. I think it is a good way to look at that. But see, after all, we are speaking in English. If we speak in English, there are some conservational devices, weapons we have to use. तो नाम तो देना है कुछ, इसलिए तो Hinduism word है. वैसे तो ism is a derogated way of saying something, that you are doing fake propaganda on the basis of something you believe in. That is called ism. So, but most people don't know that. So Hinduism naam hai, kya kare. But you have to know that Hinduism and Buddhism is not entirely different, not too gigantically different. It is a branch on the same tree. Lao Tse was not the first to teach Taoism. He had precursors who, however, were not authors. He was the writer of the first book on Taoism, which served as the basis for the further development of the doctrine. On this account, its paternity is attributed to him. There was reference to this doctrine, it is said, in the official archives. The pre-Taoists were the analysts and astrologers of the Cheu, Tcheou. Lao Tse, who formulated the system, was one of them. Oh. The third ministry containing these archives registered all which came from foreign parts as Taoism, just like Taoism did, okay? The third ministry containing these archives registered all which came from foreign parts as Taoism did. For as Father Weiger says, Taoism is in its main lines the Chinese adaptation of the contemporary doctrine of the Upanishads. Let me mark this. Orle Taoisme dans ses grandes lignes une adaptation chinoise de la doctrine indienne contemporaine des Upanishads. The actual fact of importation cannot, in default of documents, be proved, but as the learned author says, it cannot be proved. Because not all the documents are available at the moment. But as the learned author says, the fact that the doctrine was not Chinese, that it was then current in India and its sudden spread in China, creates in favor of the argument for foreign importation almost a certain conclusion. So Taoism is not indigenous to China. Taoism was imported to China. Interesting. That is the argument here. The similarity of the two doctrines is obvious to anyone acquainted with that of the Upanishads and the doctrine of Shakti. The dualism of the manifesting unity, Tao, manifesting unity is Tao, denoted by yin and yang, which in the first comment today, linguist says, denoted by yin and yang, appears for the first time in a text of Confucius, a contemporary of Lao Tse, who may have informed him of it. All Chinese monism descends from Lao Tse. The patriarchal texts were developed by the great fathers of Taoism, Li Tzu and Zhongzhu. See Le Pere du Système Taoist by the same author, whom the Reverend Father calls the only real thinkers that China has produced. Okay, all Chinese monism descends from Lao Tse. The patriarchal texts were developed by the great fathers of Taoism, Li Tzu and Zhongzhu. Now, This English author is saying that they were the only real thinkers that China has ever produced. Both were practically prior to the contact of Greece and India on the Indus under Alexander. The first development of Taoism was in the south. It passed later to the north, where it had a great influence. There are Taoist temples in Kolkata, Sarvanash. According to Taoism, there was in the beginning. According to Taoism, there was in the beginning, is now, and ever will be an ultimate reality, which is variously called Huan, the mystery, which cannot be named or defined because human language is the language of limited beings touching limited objects, whereas Tao is imperceptible to the senses and the unproduced cause of all, beyond which there is nothing. O, the formless, or Tao, the causal principle, the unlimited, inexhaustible source from which all comes, itself proceeds from nothing but all from it. Okay, itself proceeds from nothing but all from it. All proceeds from it. So it is said of Brahman that it is in itself beyond mind and speech, formless, and as the Brahma Sutra says, that from which the universe is born, by which it is maintained and into which it is dissolved. From the abyss of its being, it throws out all forms of existence and is never emptied. It is an infinite source of exteriorizing from itself all forms by its power, the Tai, Tei. These forms neither diminish nor add to Tao, which remains ever the same. These limited beings are as a drop of water in its ocean. Tao is the sum of and yet as infinite beyond all individual existences. Like Brahman, Tao is one, eternal, infinite, self-existent, omnipresent, unchanging, immutable and complete Purna. At a particular moment, to speak in our language, for it was then beyond time. At a particular moment, Tao threw out from itself Tai, its power, or virtue, or Shakti, which operates in alternating modes called yin and yang and produces, as it were, by condensation of its subtlety, the Shakti, which our equivalent would be Shakti Ghanibhuta. Condensation of its subtlety, the heaven and earth and air between, from which come all beings. The two modes of its activity, yin and yang, are inherent in the primal that with capital T, primal that, and manifest as modes of its Tai or Shakti. Yin is rest, and therefore, after the creation of the phenomenal world, a going back, retraction, okay. And therefore, after the creation of the phenomenal world, a going back, retraction, concentration towards the original unity, which is basically nivritti, whereas yang is action and therefore the opposite principle of going forth or expansion, pravritti. These modes appear in creation under the sensible forms of earth, yin, and heaven, yang. Damn. The one original principle or taks, like Shiva or Shakti, thus becomes dual in manifestation as heaven and earth, from which emanate other existences. The state of yin is one of rest, concentration and imperceptibility, which was the own state, Swarupa of Tao, before the time and things were. The state of yang is that of action, expansion, of manifestation in sentient beings, and is the state of Tao in time, and that which is in a sense not its true state. Oh, all this again is Indian. So, the state of yang is that of action, expansion, of manifestation in sentient beings, and is the state of Tao in time, and that which is in a sense not its true state. All this again is Indian. The primal state of Brahman or Shiva Shakti before manifestation is that in which it rests itself, Swarupa Vishranti, that is, the state of rest and infinite formlessness. It then, by its power, Shakti, manifests the universe. There exists in this power the form of two movements or rhythms, namely the going forth or expanding pravritti and the return or centering movement nivritti. This is the eternal rhythm, the pulse of the universe, in which it comes and goes from that which in itself does neither. From that which in itself does neither. And you see, vibration होता है कैसे? Oscillation से. Okay, any vibration, any substance is it could be argued is a collection of a high frequency, because high frequencies solidify, or if it's high enough. But also vibration पैदा कैसे होता है? Because of oscillation, because of something going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Okay, if I move this pen fast enough, you will hear a sound like which is why तलवार चलाने के वक्त भी आवाज आता है. तो that is that back and forth could be argued is in the Hindu sense nivritti and pravritti. Although sound होने के लिए it does not have to come back necessarily. Even the movement itself creates a sound, but that sound is created because once that movement that sword goes that fast cutting through air, the air disperses so quickly that oscillations are formed in the molecules of the air, and that creates the sound, which is then perceived by our ears, which is an input transducer. Our ear is an input transducer, just like a mic, which collects that air pressure variations and converts that into electrical signals, which sends the feeling of a sound to your brain. But is this a real or ideal movement? According to Father Weiger, Taoism is a realistic and not idealistic pantheism, in which Tao is not a conscious principle but a necessary law, not spiritual but material, though imperceptible by reason of its tenuity and state of rest. He also calls heaven and earth unintelligent agents of production of sentient beings. I speak with all respect for the opinion of one who has made a special study of the subject, which I have not so far as its Chinese aspect is concerned, but even if, so with all due respect he's saying basically, but even if, as is possible at this era, the full idealistic import of the Vedanta had not been developed, I doubt the accuracy of the interpretation which makes Tao material and unconscious. According to Father Weiger, Tao prolongates itself. Each being is a prolongation or prolongment of the Tao. Attachment to Tao, that energy, that consciousness. Each being is a prolongation or prolongment of the Tao, attached to it and therefore not diminishing it. Tao is stated by him to be universal nature. Tao is stated by Weiger to be a universal nature, the sum, samashti, of all individual natures which are terminal points or terminations of Tao's prolongation. Similarly, in the Upanishads, we read of Brahman producing the world from itself, as the spider produces the web from out of itself. Tao is thus the mother of all that exists. If so, it is the mother of mind, will, emotion, and every form of consciousness. How are these derived from merely a material principle? May it not be that just as the Upanishads use material images to denote creation, therefore idol worship is justified? May it not be that just as the Upanishads use material images to denote creation, and yet posit a spiritual conscious, though not in our limited sense, yet posit a spiritual conscious principle. Lao Tse, who was indebted to them, to the Upanishadic scholars or authors, may have done the same. Is this also not indicated by the Gnostic, Gnostic, Gnostic doctrine of the Taoists? The author cited here, Weiger, says that to the cosmic states of yin and yang correspond in the mind of man the states of rest and activity. When the human mind thinks, it fills itself with the forms or images. When the human mind thinks, it fills itself with forms or images and is moved by desires. Then it perceives only the effects of Tao, namely distinct sentient beings. When on the contrary, the action of the human mind stops and is fixed and empty of images of limited forms, it is then the pure mirror in which is reflected the ineffable and unnameable essence of Tao itself, of which intuition the fathers of Taoism speak at length. This common analogy of the mirror is also given in the Kama Kala Vilasa, where it speaks of Shakti as the pure mirror in which Shiva reflects himself. Pratiphalati Vimarsha Darpane Vishade. And Vishade. This trait of Sanskrit words having the A Ucharan is so Bengali like. I don't know. Does anyone here know more than one Indian language? It seems that Bengali is the closest surviving daughter of Sanskrit. So this would be almost understandable even if pronounced in Bengali in Bengali in the Bengali way. Pratiphalati Bimarsha Darpane Bishade. The conscious mind does not reflect a material principle as its essence. Okay, the conscious mind does not reflect a material principle as its essence. Its essence must have the principle of consciousness which the mind itself possesses. It is to tie, TEI, it is to tie the virtue or power which Tao emits from itself, that we should attribute what is apparently unconscious and material. But the two are one, just as Shiva, the possessor of power, Shaktiman, and Shakti or power are one, and this being so distinct, this being so, distinctions are apt to be lost. In the same way, in the Upanishads, statements may be found which have not the accuracy of distinction between Brahman and its Prakriti, which we find in later developments of Vedanta and particularly in the Shakta form of it. Moreover, we are here dealing with the one in its character both as one, okay, one with capital O. Moreover, we are here dealing with the one in its character both as cause and as substance of the world, its effect. It is of Prakriti Shakti and possibly of Tei that we may say that it is an apparently material unconscious principle. It is an apparently material unconscious principle imperceptible by reason of its tenuity and immobile to the degree that it is not productive objective effect. Further, Weiger assures us that all contraries issue from the same unchanging Tao and that they are only apparent. But relative to what? He says that they are not subjective illusions of the human mind, but objective appearances, double aspects of the unique being, corresponding to the double aspects of the unique being again with capital B, okay? Corresponding to the alternating modalities of yin and yang. That is so. For as Adi Shankaracharya says, external objects are not merely projections of the individual human mind, but of the cosmic sound, the Ishwari Shakti. Fair enough. We must not, of course, read Taoism as held in the 6th century BC as if it were the same as the developed Vedanta of Shankara, who, according to European chronology, lived more than 1,000 years later. But this interpretation of Vedanta is an aid in enabling us to see that it is enabling us to see what is at least implicit in earlier versions of the meaning of their common source, the Upanishads. As is well known, Shankara developed their doctrine in an idealistic sense, and therefore his two movements in creation are avidya, the primal ignorance which produces the appearance of the objective universe, and vidya, or knowledge which dispels such ignorance, ripening into that essence and unity which is spirit consciousness itself. Actually, this goes almost hand in hand with what Nietzsche says about truth and untruth. This is crazy. He did. Oh, no wonder he did talk about Vedanta many times. This is exactly what Nietzsche says about truth and untruth. That science, objective truth, etc. That is the useless or that is not even truth. The true is what is necessary for you. The true is what is considered mythology, etc. by science. Which is what Shankaracharya is also saying, that avidya is the primal ignorance because of which you think you can see the objective universe. And vidya or knowledge which dispels such ignorance, ripening into that essence and unity which is spirit consciousness itself. That is truth, according to Nietzsche. वैभव इज सेइंग दादा वो अद्वैता और डोनाल्ड हॉफमन वाला भी देख लो, बहुत इंटरेस्टिंग है, प्रूविंग बेसिक्स ऑफ अद्वैता मैथमेटिकली एंड साइंटिफिकली। आई सी। हाँ, अभी वीडियो देखने का एकदम मेंटल जोन में नहीं हूँ कुछ दिनों से। वीडियो वीडियो कुछ कुछ पॉलिटिक्स वॉलिटिक्स कुछ चीज़ों का वीडियो मैं नहीं देख रहा हूँ बहुत दिनों से। सिर्फ बुक्स अभी बहुत सारे पढ़ने हैं। Aupanishadic doctrine may be regarded either from the world or material aspect or from the non-world and spiritual aspect. Men have thought in both ways, and Shankara's version is an attempt to synthesize them. The Taoist master Qi said that the celestial harmony was that of all beings in their common being. Common being mean in this being is being with capital B. All is one as we experience in deep sleep, Shushupti. All contraries are found from the same flute, mushrooms springing from the same humidity. Not real, distinct beings, but different aspects of that one universal being. I has no meaning except in contrast with you or that, okay? I has no meaning except in contrast with you or that. Exactly. Of course, this is always true. There is nothing is good or bad. Nothing even exists in a way. No concept can exist in abstraction. Everything is in comparison to something else. And which is why when commies say, what about Trihodai? What about Trihodai? In every argument, that makes absolutely no sense. Everything you have to argue by comparing it to something else. Everything has to be comparative. But who is the mover of all? Everything happens as if there were a real governor. The hypothesis is acceptable provided that one does not make of this governor a distinct being. अलग being बोलोगे तो तब ये problem हो जाएगा. तब it's not very right. The hypothesis of a mover is acceptable provided that one does not make of this governor a distinct being. He, I translate Father Weiger's words, he is a tendency without palpable form, the inherent norm of the universe. Its immanent evolutionary formula. That is the governor. That is basically Shiva, or even Brahman, I guess. The wise know that the only real is the universal norm. ये तो है सनातन धर्म. उसका उपासना करना. Or imbibing those laws of universe into your life. And whatever happens in your body also happens in the universe. That is also something Nietzsche says. Nietzsche says that there's no more philosophy in any book of philosophy than the amount of philosophy that's in your body, in your how your food processing happens, how you sleep, how you think, how your muscles develop. Like the idea of what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. That is exactly how muscles develop. That you work out, muscles get damaged. The next day muscles realize that, oh, we need more muscle to now help this guy pick up the dumbbell that he's trying to pick up all of a sudden. So let's give him more muscles. That's how you become stronger. And the quote goes, Jatha pinde tatha brahmande. Or I guess Jatha brahmande tatha pinde. So he is a tendency without palpable form, the inherent norm of the universe, its immanent evolutionary formula. The wise know that the only real is the universal norm. The unreflecting vulgar believe in the existence of distinct beings. As in the case of the Vedanta, much misunderstanding exists because the concept of consciousness differs in East and West, as I point out in detail in the essay dealing with Chit Shakti, which will come later on in this book. The space between heaven and earth in which the power, Virtu, Shakti or Tai, is manifested, that space between heaven and Shakti in which the power or Shakti is manifested is compared by the Taoists to the hollow of a bellows of which heaven and earth are the two wooden sides. A bellow which blows without exhausting itself. Bellow किसको बोलते पता है? तो वो हारमोनियम में जिसको खींचते हैं. A bellow which blows without exhausting itself. The expansive power of Tao in the middle space is imperishable. The expansive power of Tao in the middle space is imperishable. It is mysterious mother of all beings. The come and go of this mysterious mother, that is, the alternating of the two modalities of the one, produced heaven and earth. Thus acting, she is never fatigued. From Tao was exteriorized heaven and earth. From Tao emanated the producing universal power or Shakti, which again produced all beings without self-exhaustion or fatigue. The one having put forth its power, the latter acts according to two alternating modalities of going forth and return. Again, the back and forth, the bellowing like a harmonium, the pravritti and nivritti, or the oscillations that creates vibrations. This action produces the middle air or ki, which is tenuous matter, and through yin and yang issues all gross beings. That is how vibrations occur and high frequencies solidify, which is why you can even use high frequency weapons to hit an enemy. Like when a bomb blast happens, everyone doesn't die just because of the fire. The vibrations destroys so many things. Their coming into existence is compared to an unwindling or Davidage. This is not Davidage. This is Devidage. Their coming into existence is compared to an unwinding from that or Tao, as it were a thread from reel or spool. Okay, that their coming into existence is like a thread coming out of a reel, like one string of wool coming out from a ball of wool. In the same way, the Shakta Tantra speaks of the uncoiling. Shakti is coiled, Kundalini, round the Shiva point, Bindu, one with it in dissolution. On creation, she begins to uncoil in a spiritual line movement, which is the movement of creation. The Taoist father Liu Tse analyzed the creative movement into the following stages: the great mutation anterior to the appearance of tenuous matter, movement of the two modalities in undefined being, this is the movement of the two modalities in undefined being, then the great origin or the stage of tenuous matter, then the great commencement or the stage of sensible matter, then the great flux or the stage of plastic matter, and actual present material compounded existences that we see around us, that we can perceive with our five senses. In the primitive stage, when matter was imperceptible, all beings to come were latent in a homogeneous state. I will only add as bearing on the subject of consciousness that the author cited, meaning Father Weiger, states that the Taoists lay great stress on intuition and ecstasy, which is said to be compared to the unconscious state of infancy. Intuition is said to be compared to the unconscious state of infancy, intoxication, and narcosis. These comparisons may perhaps mislead, just as the comparisons of the yogi state to that of a log misled Kastavat. This does not mean that the yogi's consciousness is that of a log of wood, but that he no more perceives the external world than the latter does. So this does not mean that the yogi's consciousness is that of a log of wood, but what is the similarity? In the same way that the log of wood does not perceive the external world, in the same way a true highly qualified yogi also does not perceive the external world anymore. He does not do so because he has the samadhi consciousness, that is illumination and true being itself. He is one then. He does not do so. He does not perceive the world around him because he has the samadhi consciousness, that is illumination and true being itself. He is one then with Tao and Tei or Shakti in their true state. Deep concepts elaborated as lucidly as possible. Now, next chapter is called Alleged Conflict of Shastras. This was pretty deep. Let's see how big is this chapter. Yeah, हो जाएगा. A not uncommon modern criticism upon the Indian Shastras is that they mutually conflict. This is due to a lack of knowledge of the doctrine of Adhikara and Bhumika, particularly amongst Western critics, whose general outlook and mode of thought is ordinarily deeply divergent from that which has prevailed in India. The idea that the whole world should follow one path is regarded by the Hindus as absurd, being contrary to nature and its laws. A man must follow that path for which he is fit, that is, for which he is Adhikari. Adhikara or competency literally means spreading over. That is taking possession of. Okay, that means Adhikara. What is to be known? Gyatavya. What is to be done? Kartavya, gyatobbo, kartobbo, and praptobbo. What is to be acquired? जिसका प्राप्ति करना है, is determined not once and generally for all, but in each case by the fitness and capacity therefore of the individual. तो meritocracy है, equality of outcome नहीं है, which is why socialism, equity, that the concept of equity is a very anti-Hindu, anti-Sanatani concept to begin with. There is no concept of जो भी तुम्हारा क्वालिफिकेशन हो तुमको ये दिया जाएगा, तुमको ये हाई पोस्ट दे दिया जाएगा. वैसा पागलपंथी हमारे यहाँ नहीं है, एटलीस्ट थियोलॉजिकल लेवल पे तो नहीं है. फिटनेस एंड कैपेसिटी देख के each man can know, do and obtain not everything, nor indeed one common thing, but that only of which he is capable, adhikari. What the jiva can do, think or obtain is his competency or adhikara. A profound and practical doctrine on which all Indian teaching and sadhana is based. This is practical, and that is how free markets also function. That is why free market capitalism is a Sanatani principle, which is why the distortions that have come about in USA today doesn't need to be blamed on Chanakya or Sanatan Dharma, but free market operates on these same principles. Therefore, the so-called Sanatani economics, that the book that's going to be written by Ankit Shah, will discuss a lot of things that Chanakya has discussed. But there will be, of course, the involvement of temple economy, group wealth, etc., to a large extent, family, strength of family, which were all distorted by American capitalism. But in its core essence, what free market is, that is this. What the jiva can think, do or obtain is his competency or adhikara, a profound and practical doctrine on which all Indian teaching and sadhana is based. As men are different and therefore the adhikara is different, so there are different forms of teaching and practice for each adhikara. Such teaching may be Shrauta or Ashrauta, dealing here with the first, Shrauta. It is said of all Vidyas, the Lord is Ishana, and that these differing forms are meant for differing competencies. Right. Though all have one and the same object and aim, फिर भी तुम्हारे capability के merit के basis पे तुमको दिया जाएगा ये अधिकार. This has been well and concisely worked out by Bhaskara Raya, the commentator on Tantric and Upanishadic texts, in his Bhashya upon the Nitya Shodha Shikarnava. Nitya Shodha Shikarnava, which is according to him a portion of the great Vamakeshvara Tantra. The second portion of the Nitya Shodha Shikarnava is also known as the Yogini Hridaya. These valuable tantric texts have been published as the 56th volume of the Purna Anandashrama series, which includes also the Jnanarnava Tantra. The importance of the Vamakeshvara is shown by the fact that Bhaskara Raya claims for it the position of the independent 65th Tantra, which is mentioned in the 31st verse of the Ananda Lahari. Others say that the Swatantra there spoken of is the Jnanarnava Tantra, and others again are of the opinion that the Tantra Raja is the great independent Tantra of which the Ananda Lahari speaks, which is ascribed to Srimadacharya Bhagavat Pada, that is Shankaracharya. Bhaskara Raya, who lived in the first half of the 18th century, gives in his commentary the following exposition. Quote, "In this world all long for happiness, which is the sole aim of man. Of this there is no doubt. Now let's remember the interesting simplification brought about by Chanakya. Sukhasya mulam dharma, dharmasya mulam rajya, rajya meaning governance, good governance. Rajyasya mulam, Sukhasya mulam dharma, dharmasya mulam artha, arthasya mulam rajya, rajyasya mulam vinaya, vinayasya mulam indriya jaya, indriya jayasya mulam vridhapo seva. In this world, all long for happiness, which is the sole aim of man. Of this there is no doubt. This happiness again is of two kinds, namely that which is produced and transient, kritrima, and that which is unproduced and enduring, akritrima, called respectively desire, kama, and liberation, moksha. Dharma procures happiness of both kinds, and artha helps to the attainment of dharma. These therefore are desired of all. There are thus four aims of man, purusharthas, which, though as between themselves different, are yet intimately connected, the one with the other. The Kalpasutra says that self-knowledge is the aim and end of man. Svavimarsha purushartha. No wonder is individualism so predominant in Hindu society. This is said of liberation as being the highest end, since it alone gives real and enduring happiness. This saying, however, does not raise any contradiction, for each of the four is to be had by the jnana and vijnana appropriate for such attainment. These purusharthas are again to be attained according to the capacity of the individual seeking them. The quote says, Tadrisa chittaika sadhyani. The competency of the individual chitta depends again on the degree of its purity. The very merciful Bhagavan Parameshwara, desirous of aiding men whose mind and disposition or chitta differed according to the results produced by their different acts, promulgated different kinds of vidya, which, though appearing to be different as between themselves, yet have as their common aim the highest end of all human life, that is liberation. Shruti also says in Nrisimha Purvatapani and Mahanarayana, quote, of all vidyas the Lord is Ishana Sarva Vidyanam, okay, Ishana Sarva Vidyanam. And in Shweta chapter 6 to 18, I who desire liberation, Shweta Upanishad, okay, I who desire liberation seek refuge in that Deva who creates Brahma. Okay, I who desire liberation seek refuge in that Deva who creates Brahma, who again reveals the Vedas and all other learning. Yo Brahmanam vidadhati purvam yo vai vedamscha prahinoti. The particle cha impliedly signifies the other vidyas collectively. Yeah, yo Brahmanam vidadhati purvam yo vai vedamscha prahinoti. Cha. We also find it said in furtherance of that statement, quote, to him the firstborn he gave the Vedas and Puranas, end quote. Smriti also states that the omniscient poet, Kavi, carrier of the trident, Shiva Shulapani, is the first promulgator of these 18 Vidyas, which take different paths. Bhinna Vartma. It follows that inasmuch as Paramashiva, the benefactor of the worlds, is the promulgator of all Vidyas, they are all authoritative, though each is applicable for differing classes of competency. Okay? Each is applicable for differing classes of competency. Adhikari Bhedana. Okay, different levels of adhikara. Beautiful. No wonder acceptance comes to us naturally. This has been clearly stated in Sutta Smihita and similar works. It's probably spelled wrong. It will probably be Sutta Samhita maybe. Capacity, adhikara, is for example of this kind. The unbeliever, Nastika, that is in Veda, Nastika unbeliever in Veda, has adhikara in darshanas such as Arhata, Jaina and the like. Okay. Even the one who rejects Veda has adhikara in darshanas like the Arhata of Jainas and the like. Men of the first three castes have adhikara in the path of Veda. Similarly, the adhikara on an individual varies according to the purity of his chitta. For we see that the injunctions relating to dharma, and see this purity of chitta is important, because what you can easily see among people is what is the intention of a person while doing this. Okay, let's say today I start reading and discussing the Rig Veda. Some few trads might get angry, but most will not, because they know my intentions. I'm trying to learn. I'm trying to disseminate whatever I am learning from the Rig Veda, okay, from my live stream. Similarly, no one got pissed off with Rajamouli for showing Prabhas taking away the shivling, lifting it up and shifting it elsewhere. That is, by Shastra, is a very wrong thing to do, because all our gods are sthanu, especially Shiva is sthanu. Okay, Om Sthanave Namaha. If he is consecrated there, he is there. Okay. But no one got pissed off with him, because his intentions were very clear. His chitta was pure. For we see that the injunctions related to dharma vary according to ashrama and caste, varna bheda. Such texts as praise any particular vidya are addressed to those who are adhikari therein, and their object is to induce them to follow it. Such texts again as disparage. So when these texts do praise somebody, do praise any particular vidya, that is addressed to those who are adhikari in them, and their object is to induce them to follow it. Such texts, when they disparage any vidya, they are addressed to those who are not adhikari therein, and their object is to dissuade them from it. Nor again should these words of blame or praise be taken in an absolute sense, that is otherwise than relatively to the person to whom they are addressed. Okay, they are not for any group of people, they are for the particular person who is not an adhikari or is being appreciated because he is an adhikari. Yani tattad vidya prashamsakani vachanani tani tattadadhikarinam pratyeva pravartakani yani cha tannidakani tani tatta danadhikarinam prati nivartakani na punarnahi punarnahi nindanyayana vidheyastavakani. This is Bhaskara Raya's introductory commentary to Nitya Shodha Shikarnava Tantra, page 2. In early infancy, parents and guardians encourage the play of the child in their charge. When the age of study is reached, the same parents and guardians chastise the child who inopportunely plays in the wrong time. This we all see. A male of the three higher castes should, on the passing of the age of play, learn his letters and then meter, chandas, in order to master language. The Agni Purana has many texts such as faultless is a good kavya. Okay, this is a text in Agni Purana that says, quote, faultless is a good kavya. A good kavya is faultless, okay, end quote. All of which encourage the study of kavya. We also come across prohibitions such as, quote, he who has mastered the subject should avoid all discussion relating to kavya, end quote. When the object to be gained by the study of kavya is attained and competency is gained for the next higher stage, Uttara Bhumika, it is only a harmful waste of time to busy oneself with a lower stage, Purva Bhumika. If you're in class 12, why should you go around sitting in a class 4 classroom? Okay. Hello guys, here to learn. You missed a lot of insanely important things. Make sure you watch from the beginning, okay? It is only a harmful waste of time to busy oneself with a lower stage, Purva Bhumika, in neglect of that higher stage for the sadhana of which one has become competent. You are now qualified for it. Why will you go back to that? This is the meaning of the prohibition. Again, the injunction is to study Nyaya Shastra so as to gain a knowledge of the Atma as it is, and other than as it appears in the body, and so forth. The texts are many, such as, quote, by reasoning, Shunga, seek the Atma, end quote. Shunga is equal to Hetu is equal to avayavasa mudayat makanyaya, that is, logic with all its 5 limbs. When it is known that the Atma as such is other than the body, is separate from the body and so forth, and the means which lead to that knowledge are mastered, then man is prohibited from occupying himself with the subject of the former stage. Okay? In that case, listen to this once more. When it is known that the Atma as such is other than the body, is separate from the body and so forth, and the means which lead to that knowledge are mastered, then man is prohibited from occupying himself with the subject of the former stage, the Purva Bhumika, by such texts as Anvishiki and logic. Tarka Vidya are useless. Anvishiki and logic or Tarka Vidya are useless. Anvishikim Tarka Vidya Manu Rakto Nidarthikam. When you have understood that, when you have understood that that the Atma is other than the body and is separate from the body, when you have mastered this concept or such concepts, and also when you have mastered the knowledges which lead to all the means to attain that knowledge, when all that has been mastered, then you are not supposed to be delving into Anvishiki and Tarka Vidya. Injunctions such as, quote, the wise should practice dharma alone, dharma eva charit pragyana, pragnya, dharma eva charit pragnya, end quote, that urge man towards the next stage, Uttara Bhumika. The study of the Purva Mimamsa and the Karmakanda in the Vedas is useful for this purpose. When by this means dharma, artha and kama are attained, there arises a desire for the fourth purushartha, moksha. And therefore, to sever or tear away men from the former stage, Purva Bhumika, there are texts which deprecate karma, such as in Mundakya Upanishad, quote, by that which is made cannot be attained that which is not made. Okay. Nastya krita kritena. By that which is made cannot be attained, by that which is made, from that, anything that is made, from that, nothing that cannot be made can be attained. By that which is made cannot be attained that which is not made. Like that is, like it is said in physics also, matter cannot be created nor destroyed. By that which is made cannot be attained that which is not made. And interestingly, that goes for the education aspect here as well. Let's say what is made is your class 2 education. From that you cannot make class 12 education. You'll have to go read the things that are being taught in the class 12 classroom. Nastya krita kritena. Vashishta says that these earlier stages are 7 and that all are stages of ignorance, Ajnana Bhumika. The 7 earlier stages are all stages of ignorance or Ajnana Bhumika. Beyond these are stages of Jnana. For the attainment of the same, for the stages of Jnana, there are injunctions relating to Brahma Jnana which lead on to the next higher stage, such as in Mundakya Upanishad 1.2.12, it is said, he should go to the Guru alone. Sagurum eva bhigatchet. And listen, in Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, listen, O Maitreyi, the Atma should be realized. Atma va are drashtavya. Some say that the Jnana Bhumikas are many and rely on the text. Some say that the Jnana Bhumikas are many and they rely on the following text, which is, quote, the wise say that the stages of yoga are many, end quote. So even Jnana Bhumika is not one state, of course, one stage. The holy Vashishta says that there are 7, namely Vividisha, desire to know. Okay. There are 7 Jnana Bhumikas. Vividisha, desire to know. Vicharana, reflection. Tanumanasa, concentration. Satvapatti, commencement of realization. Commencement of realization. Asama Shakti, detachment. Padartha Bhavini. realization of Brahman only, and Turyaga, full illumination in the fourth state. And full illumination in the fourth state, Turya Milna. The meaning of these is given in and should be learned from the Jnana Shastra of Vasishtha. That sounds like Islamic teaching. By worshipping creation, one cannot attain creator. Ayan Hirsi Ali, you all know, right? Here to learn, you know who she is. An infamous critic of Islam. But she says that since in reality, actually not all Muslims are bad. So she bifurcates Muslims as two kinds of Muslims, the Makkah Muslims and the Medina Muslims. The Makkah Muslims are the people like A.R. Rahman, etc., who are just happy with their God. They are praying, they're fasting even. Whenever A.R. Rahman gets stuck with a melody, he fasts and prays harder and melodies come out of his mind, okay? These people, Ayan Hirsi Ali calls Makkah Muslims. They are just happy with God, praying, etc. And then there are the Medina Muslims who are more focused on the political, imperialistic aspects, because that's what happened in Medina. These terms are also explained in Brahmananda's commentary on the Hatha Yoga Pradipika. His account differs from that of Bhaskara Raya as regards the his account differs from that of Bhaskara Raya as regards the name of the first Bhumika. Okay, in case of the name of the first Bhumika, he differs from Bhaskara Raya, which Brahmananda calls Jnana Bhumi or Shubhecha, and the sixth is called by him Parartha Bhavini and not Padartha Bhavini. The scene is the sense in either case is the same. According to Parartha Bhavini and Padartha Bhavini. According to Brahmananda, Jnana Bhumi is the initial stage of yoga characterized by Viveka, Vairagya, and the 6 sadhanas beginning with Sama and leading to Mumuksha. 6 sadhanas. 6 sadhanas beginning with Sama and leading to Mumuksha. Vicharana is Shravana and Manana. Sravana Mananatmika. Okay. So Vicharana is Sravana and Manana. Oh, okay. So Sravana and Manan is Vicharana. Okay. Therefore, the quote is that one word was a quote itself. Sravana Mananatmika. I have to pronounce this better. Sravana Mananatmika. So Vicharana is Sravana Mananatmika. Sravana and Manana. Monon, Sravan, Vicharan. Tanumanasa is Nididhyasana. Tanumanasa is Nididhyasana, when the mind, the natural characteristic of which is to wander, your mind that is not that you have a tough time focusing on something, is directed toward its proper yoga object only, for which idol worshipping yantra helps. These 3 preliminary stages are known as sadhana bhumika. The 4th stage, satvapatti, is samragya okay. Now the 4th stage, satvapatti, is also Sampragyata Yoga Bhumika. Okay, the 4th stage, Satvapatti, is Sampragyata Yoga Bhumika. The mind having been purified by practice in the 3 preceding Bhumikas, the yogi commences to realize and is called Brahmavit. The last 3 stages belong to the Pragyata Yoga. Asampragyata Yoga. Ashampragyata Yoga. After attainment of Satvapatti Bhumika, the yogi reaches the 5th stage called Asam Shakti. Asham Shakti. Here he is totally detached and in the state of awakening. Vyuttisthate. As such, he is called Brahmavidvara. Brahmavidvar. At the 6th or Parartha Bhavini Bhumika, he meditates on nothing but Parabrahman. The quote says, Parabrahmitrikam na bhavayati. parabrahmatiriktam. Okay. Parabrahmatiriktam na bhavayati. Okay, this makes sense now. Thank God for those overhead dashes. Parabrahmatiriktam na bhavayati. Okay, because he meditates on nothing but Parabrahman. Parabrahmatiriktam na bhavayati. He is supremely awakened. Paraprabodhita and is awake. Vyuttishta. He is then called Brahma Vidvaryan. Brahma Vidvaryan. In the last or seventh stage, Turyaga, he is Brahma Vidvarishta, and then truly attains illumination in itself. Swatah parato va vyutthanam prapnoti. The Upanishads and Uttar Mimamsa are helpful for this purpose, upayogi, and should therefore be studied. See, everything is understandable in Bengali. So Upanishads and Uttar Mimamsa are very upayogi for this purpose and should therefore be studied. Upayogi. Ayan Hirsi Ali is, by the way, a Jew. She converted first to Christianity and then to Judaism. She converted to Christianity only 2 days back. When did she convert to Judaism? Kushal also said Makkah Madina thing, but as Islam obsesses over final prophet, Madina was more final than Makkah. So yeah. But Old Testament is also the same: exclusive claim to truth, exclusive God, expansionist, and prophets being genocidal. The ethnic component in Judaism prevents itself from becoming like Christianity and Islam. Right. But they consciously decided it also, because now it's not racist, ethnic, or racial in that sense, because there are African, Ethiopian Jews, etc. The Upanishads and Uttar Mimamsa are helpful for this purpose, upayogi, and should therefore be studied. Brahma Jnana again is of 2 kinds, namely Shabda and Aparokshanu Bhava. Having Shastra Drishti, the word of the Guru Vakyam, and certainty, Nishchaya, of the unity of the individual self, Swa and the Atma, are powerful to dispel inward darkness, but not the mere knowledge of words, Shabdabodha. Sirf Shabdabodh se nahi chalega. Therefore, when the Shabda Bhumika is attained, so when you are familiar with the words, with the mantras, one should not waste one's time further at this stage. And there are texts which prohibit this. Thus, quote, from Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, having become indifferent to learning, let him remain simple as in childhood. Pandityan nirvidya balyena tisthaset. Having become indifferent to learning, let him remain simple as in childhood. So if you are indifferent to learning, let him remain as stupid as a child, or ignorant as a child. Despite Bengali being more Islamized than Hindi heartland, Bengali retains more Sanskrit than Hindi in common speech. And not just Hindi. I think all the languages that I have heard, it seems to me that Bengali is probably the closest surviving, I'm saying, daughter of Sanskrit. I asked just before you joined in the live stream as well, that if anyone knows more than one Indian language, can someone confirm that if Bengali is the closest to Sanskrit, or does Bengali still have the heaviest influences of Sanskrit? Acha, Tishtho, oi Tishtho, ba Tishtho Khonokal, that Tishtha, let me pronounce it correct then. Tishtho Shet. Panditya nirvidya balyena tishtho shet. Between the second and third of the 7 stages, or the bhumikas, there is the great stage bhakti. Bhakti Mimamsa, for example, Narada Sutra and Sanat Sujatiya. Bhakti Mimamsa is helpful and should be studied. Bhakti continues to the end of the 5th bhumika. When this last is attained, the sadhaka gains the 5th stage, which is aparokshanu bhavarupa. This is Jivan Mukti. Following closely upon this is videha kaivalya. In the next quote, from jnana alone kaivalya comes. Jnanad eva tu kaivalyam. The word jnana signifies something other and higher than anubhava. Anubhava paratva. So jnana is beyond anubhava, obviously. In Nyaya and other Shastras, it is stated that moksha will be attained by mastery in such particular Shastra. In Nyaya and other Shastras, it is stated that moksha will be attained by mastery in such particular Shastra, but that is merely a device by which knowledge of the higher stage is disclosed, okay? That is merely a device by which, okay? Nyaya and other Shastras is stated that moksha will be attained by mastery in such particular Shastra, but that is merely a device by which knowledge of the higher stage is not disclosed. This is just a device which is not going to give you the higher stage. That higher stage is not disclosed in this. This is not blameworthy because its object is to remove the disinclination to study such Shastra by reason of the delay thereby caused in the attainment of Purushartha, which disinclination would exist if the sadhaka knew that there was a higher Shastra than that which he was studying. Okay, so the argument here is that even the Shastra won't give you the highest knowledge because let's read this part again. In Nyaya and other Shastras, it is stated that moksha will be attained by mastery in such particular Shastra, but that is merely a device by which knowledge of the higher stage is not disclosed. This is not blameworthy because its object is to remove disinclination to study such Shastra by reason of the delay thereby caused in the attainment of Purushartha, and which disinclination would exist if the sadhaka knew that there was a higher Shastra than that which he was studying. Okay. So everything is not revealed in these Shastras because you have to read them, but also you should not be feel at the back of your mind that why am I reading this if this is not going to give me the highest knowledge. There are texts such as, quote, by karma alone eva is achievement. This is mentioned in karma naiva. No, this is a quote saying karma naiva tu samsiddhi. By karma alone eva is achievement. And also, quote, him whom he selects by him, he is attainable. Yame vaisha vrinnute tena labhya. Him whom he selects by him, he is attainable. The word eva refers to the bhumika which is spoken of and prohibits sadhana for the attainment of phala, which can only be gained by mastery or mastery of or competence in adhikara. Okay. The word eva refers to the bhumika which is spoken of and prohibits sadhana for the attainment of phala, which can only be gained by mastery of or competence, meaning adhikara, in the next higher bhumika, uttara bhumika. The words do not deny that there is a higher stage or higher bhumika. The word alone, eva, in jnanad evatu, from jnana alone, indicates, however, that there is a stage of sadhana subsequent to that here spoken of. यहाँ पे जिसका बात हो रहा है उसके beyond भी कुछ है. There is thus no conflict between the rishis who are teachers of the different vidyas. Each one of these bhumikas has many subdivisions. Avantara bhumika, which cannot be altogether separated the one from the other. Okay. Each of one of these bhumikas has many subdivisions, avantara bhumika, which cannot be altogether separated from one from the other, and which are only known by the discerning through experience, anubhava. So it has been said, quote, O Raghava, I have spoken to thee of the seven state, seven avasthas of ignorance. Okay, seven avastha of ignorance. Again, Bengali, agyana Bengali, avastha of অজ্ঞান, অজ্ঞানের অবস্থা, সাতটি অজ্ঞানের অবস্থা. Each one is 100-fold, that is many, 100 গুণ, and yields many fruits. Nana vibha varupini. Acha, if by Bengali sense, shouldn't this be nana vidha varupini? Or am I mistaking the conjoinment? Yields many fruits. Nana vibha varupini. Yeah, nana Vibhava Rupini. Yeah, that is the conjoinment. Nana Vibhava Rupini. Right. Each one is hundredfold, that is many, and yields many fruits. Nana Vibhava Rupini. Of these many bhumikas, each is achieved by sadhana through many births. When a man by great effort prolonged through countless lives and according to the regular order of things, regular kramena, gains a full comprehension of the bhumika, in which he has certain knowledge of the Shabda Tattva of Parabrahman, he ceases to have any great attachment to or aversion for samsara, and this is a form of excellent chitta shuddhi. Such a person is qualified for the path of devotion or bhakti. Because it has been said, quote, neither indifferent, nirvinna, nor attached, nirbhinno, nor attached, because such a one, bhakti yoga grants achievement. To such a person, bhakti yoga grants achievement. Siddhida. So the person who is not nirbhinno, nor attached, that person is given siddhida by bhakti yoga. Oh, English medium se aake. Bhakti again is of two kinds: Gauni, secondary, and Para, supreme. Bhakti again is of two kinds: Gauni, secondary, and Para, supreme. The first comprises dhyana. Okay, Gauni comprises of dhyana, archana, japa, nama kirtana, and the like of the Saguna Brahman. Parabhakti is special state, which is also called Anuraga Vishesha Rupa, which is the product of these. You are not going to get to Anuraga Vishesha Rupa without dhyana, archana, japa, nama kirtana, and for which you need yantras and mantras and murtis. The first division of bhakti includes several others. Avantara Chumika. Is it a spelling mistake? Should it be Avantara Bhumika? The first division of bhakti includes several others. Avantara Chumika is written, it's probably Bhumika. The first of these is Bhavana Siddhi, illustrated by such texts, quote, let him meditate on woman as fire. Yoshamagnim Dhyaita. The second is worship, or Upashti, as directed in such texts in Chandogya Upanishad as, quote, Mano Brahmetyu Pashita, end quote. The third is Ishvaropashti, worship of the Lord, Ishvara Rupashana. Since the aspects of the Lord vary according as he is viewed as Surya, Ganesha, Vishnu, Rudra, Parashiva, and Shakti, in the same way, the forms of worship belong to different bhumikas. Okay. The forms of Shakti again are endless, such as Chaya. The forms of Shakti are again endless, such as Chaya, Ballabha, Lakshmi, and the like. In this manner, through countless ages, all these bhumikas are mastered. When there arises Gauna Bhakti for Tripura Sundari. On perfection of this, there is Parabhakti for her. This is the end, for it has been said in Kularnava Tantra, quote, Kaula Jnana is revealed for him whose chitta has been fully purified. Arka, Ganapatya, Vaishnava, Shaiva, Daurga, meaning Shakta, and other mantras in their order, end quote. Bhaskara Raya also quotes the statement in the Kularnava Tantra, quote, higher than Vedachara is Vaishnavachara, higher than Vaishnavachara is Shaivachara, higher than Shaivachara is Dakshinachara, higher than Dakshinachara is Vamachara, higher than Vamachara is Siddhantachara, higher than Siddhantachara is Kaulachara, and from higher than Kaulachara, there is nothing higher nor better. Okay, this might be controversial to a lot of people. Let me just mark this. This is being said by Bhaskara Raya. Guys, who is Bhaskara Raya? I've never heard of him. This book is gigantic and very, very fascinating and very voluptuous with information. Higher than Vedachara. Gauno, yes. So, Kulanava Tantra says higher than Vedachara is Vaishnavachara, higher than Vaishnavachara is Shaivachara, higher than Shaivachara is Dakshinachara. Higher meaning not better, higher meaning takes more effort. Higher than Shaivachara is Dakshinachara, higher than Dakshinachara is Vamachara, higher than Vamachara is Siddhantachara, higher than Siddhantachara is Kaulachara. And I guess the Kaul Brahmins of Kashmir, they are all experts in Kaulachara, although they are Shaivites, I think. Or Shaiva Tantrics. They used to, at least. Many original texts might be cited relative to the order of the stages or Bhumika Krama, but which are not quoted for fear of prolixity. What is the meaning of prolixity? Let me just check. This seems interesting. This is important. Let me check what is the meaning of prolixity. If someone can type fast here, let me know, okay? What is prolixity? Why is not everything mentioned? In order to avoid prolixity. Prolixity means wordiness, using too many words or too many long words. Lol. Some of these have, many original texts might be cited relative to the order of the stages or Bhumika Krama, but which are not quoted here for fear of prolixity. Some of these have been set out in Saubhagya Bhaskara, that is Bhaskara Raya's commentary on Lalita Sahasranama. Commentary on Lalita Sahasranama. The Sundari Tapani Panchaka, the Bhavanopanishad, the Kaulopanishad, the Guhyopanishad, Mahopanishad and other Upanishads, Veda Shirobhaga, describe in detail the Gauni Bhakti of Sri Mahatripura Sundari. Gauni Bhakti of Mahatripura Sundari and matter relating and the stuff and the things relating thereto. The Kalpasutras of Ashvalayana and others, or Ashwalayan. The Kalpasutras of Ashvalayana and others, the Smritis of Manu and others came after the Purvakanda of the Veda. In the same way, the Kalpasutras of Parashurama and others and the Yamals and other Tantras belong to the latter part of the Veda or the Upanishad Kanda. The Puranas relate to and follow both Kandas. Therefore, the authority of the Smritis, Tantras and Puranas is due to their being based on Veda. Smriti Tantra Puranam, the quote says, Smriti Tantra Puranam Veda Mula Katve Naiva Pramanyam. Those which seem pratyaksha opposed to Shruti, if it is Shruti Viruddha, they form a class of their own and are without authority and should not be followed unless the Veda, the Mula Shruti, is examined and their conformity with it is established. Because Veda Khilo Dharma Moolam or Dharma Khilo Veda Moolam. There are some tantras, however, which are in every way in conflict with the Veda. The quote says, Yanitu Sarvamsena Veda Viruddhyanyeva. They are some Pashupata Shastras and Pancharatra. They are not for those who are in this Bhumika, that is, in the Veda Pantha. He who is qualified for rights enjoined in Shruti and Smriti, who are Srota Smartaka Madhikara, he who is qualified for rights enjoined in the Shruti and Smriti, that person who is known as Srota Smarta Karmadhikara. Srota Smarta Karmadhikara. Srota Smarta Karmadhikara is only adhikari for these Pashupata and Pancharatra, which is opposed to Vedas, if by reason of some sin or papa he falls from the former path. Then it has therefore been said, quote, the Lord of Kamala, Vishnu, spoke the Pancharatras, the Bhagavata, and that which is known as Vaikhanasa Bhidama form of Vaishnavism for those who have fallen away from the Vedas or are Veda Bhrashta. The following texts relate only to some of the Shastras of the classes mentioned. So we have the following. Quote, he who has fallen from Shruti, who is afraid of the expiatory rites, prayashchitta prescribed therein, should seek shelter in Tantra so that by degrees he may be qualified for Shruti, so that he becomes Shruti Siddhyartham. Okay, qualified for Shruti meaning Shruti Siddhyartham. Though the general term Tantra is employed, particular Tantras, that is, those opposed to Shruti or Astrauta, are here meant. The Adhikarana Sutra, which is a Sutra, the Adhikarana Patyura Samanjasyat, okay? That is the name of a text. That is the name of a sutra called Adhikarana Patyura Samanjasyat. Adhikarana Patyura Samanjasyat applies to tantras of this class. The Agastya and other tantras which describe the worship of Rama, Krishna, Nrisimha, Rudra, Parashiva, Sundari, Shakti, and others evidently derive from the Ramatapani and other Upanishads. There is therefore no reason to doubt but that they are authoritative, because they draw from Ramatapani and other Upanishads. Yeah, Afin is asking, Acha, I have a question. What's the use of the so-called Kaul Acharya being higher when the Kaul Brahmins have been genocided in their own homeland? What's the answer? Clearly that was a failure. No, because spirituality is not for self-defense. Spirituality is for your advancement of your spirit, your consciousness, your intelligence, how you perceive the world. Spirituality is not for defending a sword from entering your chest. Okay, for that we have Kshatriyas. No wonder. That is why there is no opposition to a self-defense or attacking or killing people when necessary. That's not something they did. They were doing their own spirituality. So, are you saying that they should have picked up arms and defended themselves? Yeah, that didn't happen. That though people who are not Kaul Acharyas, even they did not do. That was a over glorification of the spiritual path, or if the spiritual people who were expected to take up arms, is that takes a lot of organization, etc., and that is almost impossible, because I guess you could have stopped them when the Islamic invasions were happening, and that could be argued it could not have been prevented, because even the rest of India faced that same thing, and the rest of India also could not prevent any of these people who had arms, who are not Kaul Acharyas, who are not spiritually advanced. Even they could not stop it, even though they were soldiers themselves, kings themselves, because of course it was not an united country. So therefore I'm giving a free pass to Kaul Acharyas. Okay. Worship or upashti of Sundari Shakti is of two kinds. Bahiryaga or outer, and Antaryaga or inner worship. Antaryaga is again of three kinds: Sakala, Sakala Nishkala, and Nishkala, thus constituting four bhumikas. So what are the four bhumikas here of Sundari Shakti? Bahiryaga and Sakala, Sakala Nishkala, and Nishkala. As already stated, the passage is from a lower to a higher and then to a yet higher bhumika. So Bahiryaga to Sakala Nishkala to Nishkala. As already stated, the passage is from a lower to a higher and then to a yet higher bhumika. 5 forms of Bahiryaga are spoken of, namely Kevala, Yamala. Okay, 5 forms of Bahiryaga are spoken of, namely Kevala, Yamal, Misra, Chakrayuk, and Veera Samkara, which have each divisions under the heads of Abhigamana and others. Oh my god. 5 forms of Bahiryaga are spoken of, namely Kevala, Yamala, Misra, Chakrayuk, and Veera Shankara, which have each 5 divisions under the heads of Abhigamana and others, and Daurbodhya and others in different tantras. So Daurbodhya in Bengali would mean that it's unintelligible, Durbodhya. Daurbodhya, and others in different tantras. Bahiryaga with these distinctions belongs to one and the same bhumika. Distinctions in the injunctions or vyavastha, distinctions in the injunctions or the vyavasthas depend entirely on differences as to place, time and capacity and not on the degree of chitta shuddhi. Because the quote says, na punaschitta shuddhi bibhedana, punaschitta shuddhi bhedana. Okay, it's not dependent on chitta shuddhi. These are based on different places, locations, whatever the local geography, capacity, etc. On the other hand, injunctions given according to difference of bhumika, which is itself dependent on the degree of purity of the chitta, that is mandatory. To sum up, the reply to the question raised by the title of this paper, the Shastras are many and are of differing form. But Ishvara is the lord of all the Vidyas, which are thus authoritative and have a common name. The adhikara of men varies. Therefore, so does the form of the Shastra. There are many stages or bhumika on the path of spiritual advance. Man makes his way from a lower to a higher bhumika. Statements in any Shastra which seem to be in conflict with some other Shastra must be interpreted with reference to the adhikara of the persons to whom they are addressed. This is a very important line. Statements which in any Shastra which seem to be in conflict with some other Shastra must be interpreted with reference to the adhikara of the persons to whom they are addressed. Yeah, that's always important to remember. What is the target audience of any content or any book? Texts laudatory or appreciative of any vidya are addressed to the adhikari therein with the object of inducing him to follow it. Texts which are disparaging of any vidya are addressed to those who are not adhikari therein. उसको बोला जा रहा है कि ये तुम्हारे लिए ठीक है, ये मत पढ़ो. ये सबको बोला नहीं जा रहा है कि ये किसी के लिए भी नहीं ठीक है, therefore मत पढ़ो. Either because he has not attained or has surpassed the bhumika applicable, because that is also necessary, that if you have surpassed your capabilities, then also you should not be stuck in reading that same thing. Or has surpassed the bhumika applicable, and their object is to dissuade them from following it. Neither statements are to be taken in an absolute sense, for what is not fit for one may be fit for another. Evolution governs the spiritual as the physical process, and the truth is in each case given in that form which is suitable for the stage reached. Right. From step to step, the sadhaka rises until, having passed through all presentments of the Vedic truth which are necessary for him, he attains the Veda Swarupa, which is knowledge for the self. When did he take a shot at Jesai Deepak? He has said many times that he disagrees with Jesai Deepak, but he thinks he has made great contributions. Did he say something recently? These ancient teachings are in many ways very constant with what is called the modernist outlook. Thus, let it be noted that there may be, as Bhaskara Raya says, adhikara for Ashrauta Shastras such as the Arhata, and there is a scripture for the Veda Bhrashta. These, though non-Vedic, are recognized as the scriptures of those who are fitted for them. If you are Nastik, if you don't believe in Vedas, even then there's not a problem. You have your Jainism, Buddhism. Like this example. Arhata is for Jains. Adhikara for Asrauta Shastras such as the Arhata, and there is a scripture for the Veda Bhrashta. These, though non-Vedic, are recognized as the scripture of those who are fitted for them. This is more than the admission that they are the scriptures in fact for such persons. The meaning of such recognition is brought out by an incident some years ago. An Anglican clergyman suggested that Mohammedanism might be a suitable scripture for the Negro who was above fetishism but not yet fit to receive Christian teaching. Though he claimed that the latter was that Christian teaching was the highest and most complete truth, this recognition, quite Hindu in its character of a lower and less advanced stage, brought him into trouble. For those who criticized him gave no recognition to any belief but their own. Hinduism does not deny that other faiths have their good fruit. For this reason, it is tolerant to a degree which has earned it the charge of being so-called indifferent to the truth, each to his own. Its principles admit a progressive revelation of the Its principles admit a progressive revelation of the self to the self. Revelation of the self to the self according to varying competencies, adhikara, and stages, bhumika of spiritual advance. Though each doctrine and practice belongs to varying levels, and therefore the journey may be shorter and or longer maybe shorter or longer as the case may be, ultimately all lead to the Veda Swarupa or knowledge of the self, than which there is no other end. That which immediately precedes this complete spiritual experience is the Vedantic doctrine. Okay, that which immediately precedes this complete spiritual experience is the Vedantic doctrine and sadhana, for which all others are propedeutic. There is no real conflict if we look at the stage at which the particular instructions are given. Thought moves by an immanent. This is what Brahma Samaj never understood. Objectively, you can quote random things and say that Murti Puja is bad, but it is about a stage. He has just posted a text in his channel. अरे बाप रे, क्या बोला? जरा यहाँ पे copy paste कर दो. There is no real conflict if we look at the stage at which the particular instructions are given. Thought moves by an immanent logic from a less to a more complete realization of the true nature of the thinker. When the latter has truly known what he is, he has known what all is. Aha. What a great quote. When the person has truly known what he is, he has known what all is. The quote which says this says, Vedayate iti Veda. Quote, Veda is that by which what is and what is true is made known. Whilst the smritis of the seers, the rishis, vary, and therefore only those are to be accepted which are in conformity with the standard of true experience or Veda, it is to be remembered that because a seer such as Kapila Adi Vidwan, upon whose smriti or experience that Samkhya is assumed to be founded, teaches Dvaitavada, it does not, in the Hindu view, follow that he had not himself reached a higher stage first, such as Advaitavada is claimed to be. Good argument. While the smritis of the seers vary and therefore only those are to be accepted which are in conformity with the standard of true experience or Veda, it is to be remembered that because a seer such as Kapila Adividvan, the founder of Samkhya, such as Kapila Adividvan teaches the Dvaitavada, it does not follow that he had not himself reached a higher stage, such as Advaitavada is claimed to be. Okay, he had himself reached that higher stage first. A seer may choose to come down to the level of more ordinary people and teach a Dvaitavada suited to their capacity or adhikara. If all were to teach the highest experience, there would be none to look after those who are incapable of it. यही तो राजा राममोहन रॉय के दिमाग में नहीं घुसा और केशव चंद्र सेन के दिमाग में नहीं घुसा. Although Raja Rammohan Roy kind of opposed Sanskrit for the very same reason, that learn English and get a job, but Keshav Chandra Sen was extra problematic in this sense. The entire Brahmo movement, everyone that ruled Bengal since the British left, the Congress Brahmo Alliance, Rabindranath Tagore, Satyajit Ray, everyone, all the elite Bengalis you know from 19th century and 20th century, all of them were Brahmos. Not 19th century, 20th century onwards. If all were to teach the highest experience, there would be none to look after those who are incapable of it and who must be led up through the necessary preliminary stages. Samkhya is the science of analysis. So it's like saying that class 12 education, PhD is a great thing. Therefore, stop studying class 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Samkhya is the science of analysis and discrimination. And therefore, the preparation of Vedanta, which is the science of synthesis and assimilation. Kapila, Gautama and Kanada, mainly built on reason, deepened and enlarged, it may be, by smriti or subjective experience. Kanada is kind of the discoverer of atoms, but philosophically, Kanada Sutra. Oh no, it's not Kanada Sutra. What is his book called? Vaisheshika Sutra. We will have to discuss that paper someday after I finish this book. Subhash Kak's paper on Vaisheshika Sutra. Kapila, Gautama and Kanada, mainly built on reason, deepened and enlarged, it may be, by smriti or subjective experience. We do not find in them any complete synthesis of shruti. We do not find in them any complete synthesis of Shruti. A general appeal is made to Shruti, and a few texts are cited which accord with what is in fact a provisionally adopted point of view, okay, temporarily. Whether it was so in fact to them or not, that is not the point here. They concentrate the thoughts and will of their disciples on them, okay? They concentrate the thoughts and will of their disciples on them, withholding the rest, as not at present suited to the capacity of the Shishya, thus following what Shankara calls Arundhati Darshana Nyaya. Arundhati. So, what is Arundhati Darshana Nyaya? That is, you focus on what I am saying right now. You don't have to bother about anything that I have not taught yet. If they themselves have gone further, they concentrate the thoughts and will of their disciples on them, withholding, if they themselves have gone further, the rest, as not at present suited to the capacity of the Shishya, thus following what Shankara calls Arundhati Darshana Nyaya. And therefore, Kapila, Gautama, Kanada are not really opposed to the mainstream, let's say. Nevertheless, the higher truth is immanent in the lower. Nevertheless, the higher truth. Oh, Kushal Mehra might be pissed off with Desai Deepak because Desai Deepak has been debating on Twitter Kushal Mehra's brother, the lawyer, something, Nikhil Mehra, on the definition of secularism. Nevertheless, the higher truth is immanent in the lower. The उसका कुछ existence है. The higher truth is immanent in the lower. The differential and integral calculus are involved in elementary algebra and geometry, exactly what we just discussed. Yay, Brahmo Samaj. The differential and integral calculus are involved in the elementary algebra and geometry because the former generalize what the latter particularize. Well said. Differential and integral calculus generalizes what algebra and geometry particularizes because it is almost in the particle form. Like these are called speech particles. Does not mean they form a word, but they do form a sentence in the end. No. But the teacher of elementary mathematics in the lower forms of a school would only confound his young learners if he were to introduce such a general theorem as, say, Taylor's theorem to them. He must keep back the other. He must keep those theorems in check. He should not teach them to kids. He must keep them back. Keep back the others until the time is ripe for them. Again, the great teachers teach wholeheartedness and thoroughness. मेरा underlining का skill इतना खराब है, ये कब improve करेगा भाई? Teachers then teach wholeheartedness and thoroughness in both belief and action, without which the acceptance of a doctrine is useless. Hence, a teacher of Dvaitavada, though himself Advaitadarshi, presents Dvaita to the Adhikari Shishya in such a forcible way that his reason may be convinced and his interest may be fully aroused. So that his reason is convinced and so that his interest is fully aroused, that's why he teaches that with full conviction. It is useless to say to a sadhaka on the lower plane that Advaita is the whole truth. Dvaita is not. But though it is not, it is suited to your capacity and therefore accept it. That can't be said. Okay, therefore, Murti Puja. He will of course say that he does not then want Dvaita, and being incapable of understanding Advaita will lose himself. This, I may observe, is one of the causes of skepticism today. What a great chapter, huh? It is useless to say to a sadhaka on the lower plane that, quote, Advaita is the whole truth, the Dvaita is not the truth, but though it is not, it is suited to your capacity and therefore accept it. He will of course say that he does not then want Dvaita, and being incapable of understanding Advaita will lose himself. This I may observe is one of the causes of skepticism today. In the olden time, it was possible to teach a system without anything being known of that which was higher. But with printing of books, some people learn that all is Maya, that Upasana is for the lower grades and so forth, and not understanding what all this means, are disposed to throw Shastric teaching in general overboard. This is insane. This is hilarious criticism. कि बुक सब जब हर कोई पढ़ने लगे और अब तो इंटरनेट का ज़माना है, तब ये लोग फालतू में बोलते रहते कि उपासना इज़ फॉर लोअर पीपल और मूर्ति पूजा इज़ फॉर लोअर पीपल. This they would not have done if they had been first qualified in the truth of their plane, and thus become qualified to understand the truth of that which is more advanced. Until Brahma Satkara. Okay. Until Brahma Sakshatkara. Okay. Brahmo Sakshatkara. Until Brahma Sakshatkara. Okay. Until Brahma Sakshatkara, all truth is relative. Until you have known Brahma. Until Brahma Sakshatkara, all truth is relative. Brahmo Sakshatkar hawa obdi সত্যি বোঝা যাবে না. Hence Bhagwan in the Gita says, na buddhi bhedam janayed ajnanam karma sanginam. Okay, na buddhi bhedam janayed or janayed ajnanam karma sanginam. Tradition supports these views. Therefore, Vyasa, Kapila, Gautama, Jaimini, Kanada and others have differently taught, though they may have possibly experienced nearly similarly. Oof, what a beautiful chapter this is turning out to be. Let me mention this. So the argument is that therefore Vyasa, Kapila, Gautama, Jaimini, Kanada and others have differently taught, but they may have possibly experienced nearly similarly. Jaimini in his Purva Mimamsa differs in several respects from Vyasa or Badarayana in his Uttar Mimamsa, though he was the disciple of the latter. Vyasa is Advaita Darshi in Vedanta, but Dvaita Darshi in Yoga Bhashya. It is to be supposed that the Shishya was Anadhikari and that his Guru therefore withheld the higher truth from him. Or was the Guru jealous and kept his Shishya in actions, withholding Brahmagyana? A Rishi who has realized, last paragraph guys, a Rishi who has realized Advaita may teach Ayurveda or Dhanurveda. He need not be Sthuladarshi because he teaches he need not be Sthuladarshi because he teaches Sthula Vishaya. Again, Shastras may differ because their standpoint and objective is different. Thus, the Purva Mimamsa deals with Dharma Jigyasa, stating that Veda is practical and enjoins duties, so that a text which does not directly or indirectly mean, or impose a duty is of no account. दुख भरी कहानी कॉमिक्स के लिए. इक्वालिटी, इक्विटी, सब कुछ गड्ढे में डाल दिया. So that a text which does, okay, so thus the Purva Mimamsa deals with Dharma Jigyasa, stating that Veda is practical and enjoins duties, and concluding that a text which does not directly or indirectly mean or impose a duty is of no account. Veda is practical because it talks of duties. The Uttar Mimamsa, on the other hand, deals with Brahma Jigyasa, and therefore in the Sutra Tattu Samanvayat, it is laid down that a mantra is relevant, though it may not impose a duty. Do this or do not do this, but merely produces a jnana. Know this, that thou art, that you are. The difference in interpretation is incidental to difference in standpoint and objective. Okay, the difference in interpretation here is because of and is incidental because of difference in standpoint and objective. किस लिए बोला जा रहा है? The same remarks apply to the various forms of Advaita, such as Vishishta Advaita, Shuddha Advaita, between the Shaktivada of the Shakta Agama and the difference between Shakti Agama and difference between the Shaktivada of the Shakta Agama versus the Vivartavada. In some Shastras, stress is laid on karma, in others on bhakti, and yet in others on jnana, as in the case of Mayavada. Okay? In some stress is laid on karma, in some in bhakti, some on jnana, as in the case of Mayavada. But though the emphasis is differently placed, each is involved in the other and ultimately meet and blend. The Mahimnastava says, Quote, though men according to their natures follow different paths, thou art the end of all, as is the ocean of all the rivers which flow thereto, end quote. Madhusudana Saraswati, commenting on this, has written his Prasthana Bheda, the reconciliation of varying doctrines. Prasthana Bheda, that is the name of the text, by Madhusudana Saraswati. Commenting on this, has written his Prasthana Bheda, the reconciliation of varying doctrines. Great. Today, the greatest need in these matters is for those who are capable of understanding the establishment of this intellectual and spiritual whole, the spiritual Purna, which we need to get some kind of coherent, united front in Hinduism. The seers, the rishis who live in the exalted sphere of calm, understand the worth and significance of each form of spiritual culture as also their synthesis. Okay. The worth and significance of each. Okay. The seers who live in the exalted sphere of calm understand the worth and significance of each form of spiritual culture as also their synthesis. Okay. Individually also, what is the need and the brilliance of it, and also why they are brilliant even in a synthesis. And they understand to the degree that lesser minds attain this level to this extent, they will also do so. Okay. And to the degree that lesser minds attain this level to this extent, they will also do so. They will also understand these different spiritual cultures in their individual sense and in their synthesis. Whilst the lower mind lives in a section of the whole fact, and therefore sees difference and conflict, the illumined who live in and have in varying degrees experience of the fact itself see all such as related parts of an whole. All these are part of the whole. Oh, that is the end of this chapter and the end of today's discussion. Let me check some comments now. Next chapter that we'll do tomorrow is Sarvanandanatha. Gigantic work. What a great work. And this is just one book. We still have by this same person we have to discuss principles of Tantra Shastra. This is just Shakti and Shakta. What a book. What research by a British guy whose mother tongue is English. A British Calcutta High Court judge. Oh. I have seen my teacher quote out of context a shlok of Bhagavad Gita which says Vedas is as unnecessary to a self-realized being as a small pond is unnecessary to one who owns all seas, making it appear as if Vedas are redundant. These are unfair, or some people, a lot of people do this with vested interests, etc. Because they think Vedas has led to casteism, etc. So I just don't want the blame of casteism on me. So I'll keep away from Vedas. Okay then, thanks a lot for joining, guys. It was a great session today. Thank you for joining. Good night.